Chapter 407. There would always be various classes with different characteristics in online games. Among them, there would be a very strange phenomenon. Players of various classes would always claim that their classes had some flaws or were trash. However, this could only be claimed by players of the same class. For example, the archer class could complain about how helpless they were when they were in close combat. However, if a grandmaster of combat claimed that he could easily trample on an archer, he would definitely be strongly refuted by the archer player. At that moment, they could come up with 100 ways to destroy a mere grandmaster of combat. This kind of emotion was more like saying that one's own child would never allow others to say it. In the eyes of martial artists like Gu Fei, this phenomenon was called sectarian bias. Therefore, under this kind of background, the worship across classes was a very strange thing. 100 Lives strategists could clearly see that the kid in front of him was clearly an archer, but he was worshipping him, a grandmaster of combat. This was too surprising. Although he was surprised, 100 Lives strategist still expressed his gratitude. That guy also searched for words to continue to flatter him. At the same time, he also prepared to continue to inform his brothers that 100 Lives strategist was here. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei, who was beside him, suddenly said, "Since you worship him so much, why don't you let him give you an autograph?" Ah. The kid was startled, but he immediately nodded happily. Sure. 100 Lives strategist was not a superstar. When had he ever signed an autograph? For a moment, he scratched his ears and cheeks in embarrassment. He was very dissatisfied with Gu Fei for pushing him into such a predicament, but he had no choice but to take the pen and paper that Gu Fei handed over. He signed the 4 words 100 Lives strategist properly. After signing, he felt that it was not flamboyant enough. It seemed like he had to find some time to practice his autograph. Gu Fei also came over to take a look. After smiling, he handed the small notebook back to the player and said, "Look, I helped you get your idol's autograph. To express your gratitude, why don't you tell me where Kin and Yoshi is?" What? Hearing this, the player's ears were ringing as if he had been hit by a double wind. Jian Nanyu was a professional robber. There were very few people who knew about this, but the archer in front of them happened to be one of them. At the same time, he also knew that they would come to the warrior camp. This information was given to them by Jian Nanyu. At this time, when he heard Gu Fei asking about Jian Nanyu, the first thing he thought of was that their plot had been exposed. It's over. The player thought to himself. As an archer, how could he escape from these 2 people? This person thought as he changed the topic. Haha, Jian Nanyu? Hey, it's right there. The kid pointed behind the 2 of them. When Gu Fei and Bai Shijing turned around to look, he immediately turned around and ran. Escaping was the thing an archer was most confident about. This guy realized that such an old-fashioned trick had actually worked, and he really admired his own acting skills and wisdom to the point of prostrating himself in admiration. However, before he could run 2 steps, his vision suddenly darkened. A person was already standing firmly in front of him. Before he could stop, the other party had already raised his leg and kicked him. The archer took a few steps back, and his shoulder was patted. Before he could turn around, he felt the world spin around him, and he was thrown to the ground. Bai Shijing pressed him to the ground, and Gu Fei walked over and said with a smile, "Don't you want an autograph?" Then he stuffed the notebook and pen into his pocket. In the game, other people couldn't take things out of a player's pocket, but it was allowed to throw things into it. This guy had already lost hope after being taken down by the 2 of them. He didn't say anything, but he subconsciously looked at his 4 companions at the warrior camp. In the end, this subconscious glance didn't escape Gu Fei's eyes. Following Gu Fei's gaze, he saw that there were 4 players in the warrior camp watching the scene unfold nervously. They were his accomplices. Gu Fei had already come to a conclusion. If they were just here to watch the show, their eyes would only be filled with curiosity and confusion. There wouldn't be such concern and nervousness. With this thought in mind, Gu Fei had already strode toward the warrior camp. Seeing this, the 4 quickly retreated into the safe zone. They had all received the message from the archer, and knew that the Grandmaster of Combat with Gu Fei was Bai Shijing, who was said to be able to fight 20+ people at Sunset City. Of course, they didn't dare to act recklessly. They hurriedly retreated and frantically called for their speed. Seeing that Gu Fei had left, Bai Shijing got up and followed him. The archer lay on the ground, scratching his head. He was very puzzled. He didn't say anything. For some inexplicable reason, was he already fine? Was he hallucinating? This guy pinched himself, and it hurt. After sitting up, he stared at Gu Fei and Bai Shijing in a daze as they walked toward the warrior camp one after another. Seeing that Gu Fei had seen through them, the 4 people at the warrior camp didn't hide anymore. After all, no one in the safe zone could do anything to them. The 4 of them held their weapons and quietly watched as Gu Fei slowly approached. Damn it. We're clearly in the safe zone. Why are we still inexplicably nervous? The 4 of them were also puzzled. You must be Jian Nanyo's friends? Gu Fei asked. Gu Fei concluded that Jian Nanyu would make arrangements here. Previously, when the archer met them head-on and sneaked behind them, he immediately concluded that the archer was Jian Nanyo's accomplice. These deductions were basically correct, but there was one thing that Gu Fei was wrong about. Jian Nanyu didn't have that many accomplices. His group of robbers was his gang of 7. Gu Fei thought that all the pirates in Linshui City were part of the same gang, but in fact they all had their own groups. The group that came over was just one of the gangs. Jian Nanyu happened to know them and knew that they were interested in Gu Fei's equipment. That was all. Gu Fei had made the wrong move in trying to find out Jian Nanyu's whereabouts from them. Moreover, the archer from before knew Jian Nanyu, but the 4 people in front of him only knew that Jian Nanyu was the warrior who had just fallen out of the 5 roaches. They had no idea that Jian Nanyu was actually in the same group as them. The 4 people indeed did not know Jian Nanyu. Of course, they wouldn't think of hiding anything. When they heard Gu Fei's baffling question, doubt and confusion were naturally written on their faces. When Gu Fei looked at them, he felt that the 4 people really had nothing to do with Jian Nanyu. He was puzzled and felt that something was wrong. When he looked back, Bai Shijing was right behind him. The archer had already regained his senses and got up to run away. Why did you let him go? Gu Fei asked. Do you want to keep him on the ground? It's very ugly. Bai Shijing replied. It was easy for Gu Fei to just stand there and talk. Pressing a person to the ground without saying or doing anything was something he didn't want to do. Gu Fei was also very helpless. He turned around and said to the 4 people, "Tell your people to come quickly. We'll wait here." Looking at the 2 people who seemed to have a card up their sleeves, the 4 people spread the message. However, when they heard that the other party had Bai Shijing, they hesitated. Legend had it that Bai Shijing could fight more than 20 people alone. This sorcerer seemed to be able to fight many people at once. If the 2 of them joined hands, they didn't have enough people. Moreover, the other party actually took the initiative to challenge them. They felt that they would not only die in vain, but they would also look very stupid. Let's give up first. The leader of the gang said. I didn't expect this guy to find Bai Shijing as his bodyguard. We don't have enough people now. Let's give up first. Everyone nodded in agreement and supported the leader's decision. Therefore, the 4 people who had already arrived at the warrior camp suffered. Gu Fei and Bai Shijing stood outside the resurrection point like 2 gods. Would they not die if they went out? However, it seemed even more meaningless to stay in the safe zone. The 4 people thought about it and simply went offline. When Gu Fei saw that there were no newcomers, and the 4 people who were originally there also chose to go offline, he knew that the other party must have given up on the operation. Moreover, Jian Nanyu was not here, so he did not know how to continue. Of course, he did not know that Jian Nanyu was resurrected by the resurrection of the dead. He only thought that Jian Nanyu had died and returned to the warrior camp. I only killed him once. How much money can I get? Seeing that he could not find Jian Nanyu, Bai Shijing had no idea what to do. He could only ask about his current income, and whether it was possible to quit while he was ahead. How would I know? You should discuss it with them later. Since it was directly related to Bai Shijing's salary, Gu Fei felt that it was better for Bai Shijing to negotiate with them himself. The deeper reason was that Gu Fei did not really understand the economic situation in the game. He did not know how much commission he should receive for killing a high-level NPC player. What about now? Now, just walk around. Maybe we'll bump into each other again, Gu Fei said helplessly. On the other side, Jian Yu and the others deliberately slowed down their pace as they walked toward the warrior camp. When they estimated that it was about time, Jian Yu sent a message to his friend. "How is it? Is that guy over there?" "He is." His friend sighed. "But we didn't do anything." "What's wrong?" "That guy actually invited Bai Shijing to be with him," said his friend. "Bai Shijing? That can't be." Jian Yu did not expect the other party to recognize Bai Shijing. He could only pretend to be surprised. "Do you guys know him?" "No, but one of our brothers went to ask around." "It is indeed Bai Shijing," replied his friend. "Did you lose any manpower?" Jian Yu was full of anticipation for this question. "Fortunately, no," replied the other party. "That's good." Jian Yu cursed the other party's ancestors 180 times in his heart. "Then what are you guys going to do next?" Jian Yu asked tentatively. We are a little short on manpower now. Let's wait for the brothers who went to level up to come back before we make a decision," said the other party. He did not show any intention of asking Jian Yu for help. People of the same trade were ultimately enemies. Exchanging information hypocritically like this was already giving each other face. When it came to actual benefits, it was better to be tactful. The other party understood this principle, and so did Jian Yu. Hence, the conversation between the two ended there. "How is it?" The other 6 were waiting for the news. Damn it, they didn't do anything. These useless people are so scared when they saw Bai Shijing. Cursed Jian Yu. Chapter 408. Gu Fei and 100-era strategist wandered around Waterside City. It was obviously impossible for them to encounter Jian Yu by chance. As for Jian Yu and the others, they didn't see any traces of Gu Fei when they arrived at the warriors' camp. Thus, they lost contact with each other. In comparison, Jian Yu was more anxious. His business still depended on Gu Fei. However, now that he knew that Gu Fei was coming for him, he wasn't too anxious. At the very least, Gu Fei shouldn't be in a hurry to leave Waterside City. However, he couldn't find Gu Fei for the time being, nor could he think of a good way to deal with them. It was a bit difficult. While the two of them didn't know what to do, the 5 experts of the child elite group rowed the boat to the shore. "Where should we put the boat?" Unscathed in Battle asked. "Up to you." Han family young master ignored him. In the end, Honest Sword Demon and Unscathed in Battle worked together to drag the boat ashore. They placed it in the most conspicuous place, and spoke to the player in charge of the nearby wine stall. They spoke very loudly, so many players in the surroundings heard them. Under such circumstances, there shouldn't be anyone who would do anything under the watchful eyes of so many people. Then, the two of them chased after the other 3. Han family young master and brother, you were gathering information from the players who were passing by the pier. As expected, whenever Gu Fei made a move, he would always attract attention. It was easy for them to find out what happened here not long ago. More importantly, they even managed to find out that Jian Yu had accepted the resurrection afterward. There really is a resurrection spell. Brother Yu was shocked. He quickly took out a small notebook and recorded the information. At the same time, he asked the source of the information about the appearance of the person who used the resurrection spell. "It's a cleric." The other party only managed to say these 4 words after a long time. Brother Yu went around to ask about the attire of the cleric. He believed that with so many people present, many of them must have used identification on this priest. After a round of searching, the players who knew didn't hide anything. Brother Yu came back with his little notebook and said, "The equipment is just a normal expert's equipment, but no one could identify the staff. It looks like it's a high-end equipment. Such an OP skill is probably attached to such a high-end equipment." The others nodded in agreement. At this moment, their actions attracted the attention of another group of people. A blue-clothed thief was already leading a group of people towards the 5 of them. "You guys." This person walked up to the front and greeted the 5 people. The 5 of them turned to look at him. "I am Painting Narrow Shadow, the leader of Waterside City's Painting Narrow Guild." The other party introduced himself. "Hello." As the 5 of them greeted each other, Brother Yu filled in the information. Painting Narrow Shadow, one of the top 10 thieves on the thief leaderboard, ranked 6th. Sorry for the embarrassment. Narrow Shadow smiled. Brother Yu pointed out his ranking as soon as he came up. In his opinion, it was proof of his fame. Ranking on the leaderboard could also be considered fame and achievement. Naturally, he was happy to be mentioned. Painting Narrow Shadow immediately looked at Brother Yu in a different light. He felt that this guy was much more pleasing to the eye. Brother Yu's popularity in the gaming circle wasn't just for show. In a situation like this, he could leave a good impression the moment he appeared. How should I address you guys? Painting Narrow Shadow was done being happy and began to inquire about their origins. In the end, every time the other party said a name, he felt like he was a bit lower. After all 5 of them said their names, Painting Narrow Shadow felt like he was already a dwarf. Of the 5 people in front of him, 4 were part of the top 10, and their IDs were all famous in the gaming circle. Painting Narrow Shadow's previous pride of being one of the top 10 and ranked 6th had disappeared without a trace. Because of this, he quickly remembered why he was here. After saying, "It's an honor to meet you twice," he quickly cut to the chase. I heard you guys seem to be asking about something? The 5 of them had been here for a long time, so they obviously couldn't hide it anymore. They could only admit it. Painting Narrow Shadow then asked, "May I know how the 5 of you are related to those 2 groups?" Han Family Young Master answered honestly, "They're hunting them down." "Oh, who are they hunting?" Han Family Young Master's answer was even bolder, "Both of them." After answering, Han Family Young Master asked in return, "Are they friends of guild leader Narrow Shadow?" In reality, Han Family Young Master knew that they weren't. He was clear about the rules of the beach tavern in Waterside City. He guessed that the other party had to take action because those 2 parties were PKING each other here. If they were friends of those 2 parties, there was no need for them to appear here. "No, they're not. They're PKING in our tavern and broke our rules. We might have to cause trouble for them." Painting Narrow Shadow's answer was just as Han Family Young Master had expected. "I see. If you have any news about him, could you please let us know as well, Guild Leader Narrow Shadow?" The Han family's young master smiled. Of course. How could Painting Narrow Shadow refuse the help of such an expert? He naturally agreed without hesitation. He even added the 5 of them as friends and became extremely intimate. At this moment, a cold snort entered their ears. They turned around and saw Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and his group. The cold snort came from the only girl in their group, Boundless Mang. "This again," Boundless Mang said in disdain when she saw them looking over. No one had seen them before. Back in Moonlit Night City, the young master of the Han family had used this trick to swindle Boundless Mang. Although the situation now was different from the one in Painting Narrow Shadow, the essence was almost the same. They didn't expect to be seen by the person involved back then. They all felt a little awkward. Only Han Family Young Master's expression didn't change. He only smiled. What a coincidence. This was a pun. He was referring to the coincidence of meeting Boundless Mang's group. He was also referring to the fact that Boundless Mang, the victim, had seen him with this trick. All in all, Han Family Young Master didn't see anything to be embarrassed about. Boundless Mang curled his lips, but didn't say anything. Friends. Painting Narrow Shadow obviously didn't notice anything from such a simple conversation. "We came from Cloud City together," Han Family Young Master said. "Drink as much as you want. It's all on me." Painting Narrow Shadow generously sold them a favor. In the end, everyone cheered at the same time. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and his group had quite a lot of people too. There were 40 of them. None of them quit during the journey. Now they were all returning to their hometown together. They were the most united mercenary group. Even the 6 members of Child Elite Group couldn't compare to them. Gu Fei, the separatist, often acted on his own. So many people. Painting Narrow Shadow's mouth was bitter. Han Family Young Master laughed dryly. "Leader Narrow Shadow, why don't you tell us what you know about the current situation?" They clearly didn't plan on staying here to drink. As they spoke, they walked towards Waterside City. "What's going on? It seems like there's some trouble." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the others began to discuss. Did Brother Zue kill people again? Fireball's guess was very accurate. He was worthy of being the first person to know Gu Fei. They had walked around the city before coming to the beach tavern, so they didn't see the scene of Gu Fei PK. If it's Brother Zue, of course we have to help, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. If it's that guy, then forget it, Fireball said. Dazzling Mang followed his gaze and knew that he was referring to Han family young master. He felt quite relieved. Why don't you like that guy? He looks like this, and he's actually a man. He's blatantly flirting with our feelings, Fireball said angrily. Good summary, Fireball. Everyone applauded, and someone even whistled. MD. Dazzling Mang cursed in his heart. He knew that this group of people were wretched, so why did they still discuss such a deep problem with them? Let's go and take a look. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka stood up. That guy said he's buying us a drink. He seems to be the owner of this stall. Someone was a bit reluctant. Take it to go, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. For this group of shameless and wretched people, was there anything they wouldn't do? They immediately shamelessly asked for wine to take away. The other side was suffering from the leader's words, so they had no choice but to make a big and profitable deal. Then, with a quick wit, they used the excuse of running out of wine to stop these guys from emptying their stall. When Narrow Shadow received this news, he almost vomited blood. Leader Narrow Shadow, what's wrong? Brother Yu, who was good at observation, noticed that Narrow Shadow's expression wasn't right. It's nothing, it's nothing. Narrow Shadow waved his hand. Through this incident, Narrow Shadow swore that he would never sell favors to others again. Leader Narrow Shadow, continue with your plan. Due to receiving the news of vomiting blood, Narrow Shadow's words were cut off. Continue. Narrow Shadow said. The two groups entered the city one after the other. According to the usual plan, after the sorcerer and the Grandmaster of Combat killed Yu, they would definitely head towards the warrior camp, because they didn't know that Yu could be resurrected. Everyone nodded. Yu and the others thought of this as well, so if he wanted revenge, he would also head there. However, one of our brothers went there to ask around. There was indeed a small dispute at the warrior camp caused by the sorcerer and the Grandmaster of Combat. We haven't seen any traces of Yu and the others yet, Narrow Shadow narrated. What about the sorcerer and the Grandmaster of Combat? Han family young master asked. We don't know where they went either. However, the description of their clothing has been sent to everyone in our guild. We'll report it once we find them, Narrow Shadow said. Han family young master nodded as he sent a message to Gu Fei. Change your clothes. Why? The guild is looking for you too. Keep a low profile. Gu Fei thought that the main purpose of this trip was to help 100 Generations Jingluan earn money. Although he liked it when the guild came to fight, it would be troublesome if there were new problems. Therefore, he listened to Han family young master's advice and changed into his robe. Also, Han family young master said, tell 100 Generations Jingluan that Yu isn't dead yet, so his income is still 0. Chapter 409. How is that possible? Gu Fei killed people like flies. His disappearance in the game was so obvious that only a blind person would be able to make a mistake. The priests among the 7 of them have resurrection skills. After you guys left, they resurrected Jian Nanyu. Han family young master told Gu Fei. Is that so? Gu Fei muttered. The revolution hasn't succeeded yet. Work hard, Han family young master said. This news was undoubtedly very bad. Gu Fei originally thought that he had already succeeded in assassinating Jian Nanyu. If he continued to kill him, it would just be like adding a painting to a brocade. He wouldn't think it was too much or too little. Now that he knew that his previous efforts were in vain, he immediately felt the same urgency to find Jian Nanyu as Jian Nanyu did. What's wrong? Why did you change your clothes? 100 Generations Jingluan was still puzzled by this very superficial question. Jian Nanyu didn't die. Gu Fei informed him of this grievous news. How is that possible? 100 Generations Jingluan, like everyone else, believed his own eyes. Resurrection, they have resurrection skills. He resurrected after we left, Gu Fei said. Who said that? 100 Generations Jingluan asked. Gu Fei's heart thumped when he heard this question. That's right. This was said by Han family young master. What wouldn't this guy do if he didn't pay up? He must have this kind of understanding of him. Furthermore, before Gu Fei could even think about it thoroughly, the young master of the Han family had already sent another message. We're already at Linshui City. You guys better hurry up. If we kill him ourselves, then the money won't be in your hands. Ha 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 ha. Too vile. You said you'd leave it to us. Gu Fei was furious. What's wrong? 100 Generations Jingluan was still confused. Those guys have also arrived at Linshui City. They'll also be looking for Jian Nanyu to kill, Gu Fei said. How could this be? Didn't you say you'd leave it to me? 100 Generations Jingluan was also furious. The two of them were indeed the same kind of people. They both valued honor and promises. On the other hand, the Han family young master was the opposite of this. When necessary, he would even betray himself. Then let's go look for him. 100 Reincarnations Jingluan was anxious. Wait, Gu Fei said. 100 Generations strategist looked at Gu Fei. It's not a good idea to search like this. Gu Fei pondered. The city is so big. Who knows where they went? Then what should we do? Why don't we return to the warrior camp? Gu Fei said. We'll let them kill us the first time. We'll wait for the second and third time at the warriors' camp. Isn't that good? I see. It's a pity about that first time. The Encyclopedia of Classics sighed. Everyone knew that Jian Nanyu's level was the highest, and he was the strongest. Therefore, the reward should be the highest. Don't worry, it'll be over after killing a few more times. Gu Fei's demeanor of looking down on any expert would always be able to destroy the opponent's self-esteem. After the two came to a decision, they turned around and headed back to the warriors' camp. After the Han family young master and Gu Fei sent a few messages in secret, they asked Narrow Shadow about the situation. Narrow Shadow and the others were already in place. Sentries were stationed at the city gates and docks. The guild members who went to level up were also urgently being recalled. The only thing that the Han family young master felt regretful about was that the other party had placed their focus on Gu Fei and 100 Reincarnations Jingluan. According to the information they had gathered, it was indeed Gu Fei and 100 Reincarnations Jingluan who had attacked first. Green Narrow Shadow's actions were fair and just. However, the Han family young master had already reminded Gu Fei to change his clothes. According to the characteristics of the two, they definitely wouldn't notice them, so there was no need to worry about it. However, there was such a great resource in front of them to deal with Jian Nanyu. It would be a waste not to use it. Guild leader Narrow Shadow, are you familiar with Jian Nanyu's group? Han family young master started to lead the conversation. I've never met him before. I've only heard that he's a lone wolf, Narrow Shadow said. Guild leader Narrow Shadow, do you know that he's a professional robber? Han family young master asked. Is that so? I've never heard of that. Narrow Shadow remained calm when he heard the news. He was not surprised at all. It was true that the trend of robbing in the parallel world was getting more and more popular. It wasn't surprising to say that anyone was a robber. Many people even thought that robbing was a career with a good future. In this world where there were no laws, people's morals were being twisted. Those who hated robbers, apart from the kind and righteous people, were the victims who had been robbed. Even for those victims, they only hated the players who robbed them. If there was a chance to rob someone who could drop a high-quality item, they might turn from a victim to a robber without any hesitation. Seeing Narrow Shadow's reaction, Han family young master knew that he was used to robbing. This could be considered a type of attitude in the game. The more time one spent in the game, the more one would get used to this kind of thing. In the parallel world, the biggest difference was that some people would start doing this kind of thing. Talking about morality, righteousness and justice with Narrow Shadow? This method was suitable for a shonen comic. In this world where everyone was an adult, the most effective method was to talk about benefits. As such, the Han family young master's words made Narrow Shadow feel a sweet temptation. Guild leader Narrow Shadow, are you interested in their resurrection staff? Of course. Narrow Shadow forcefully swallowed his words. Actually, as soon as he arrived at the beach and heard the news, Narrow Shadow had already started fantasizing about this magic staff. Although he wasn't a cleric, The more he wasn't a cleric, the more he liked this skill. In reality, clerics couldn't use this skill to resurrect themselves. They could only use this skill to satisfy their vanity. The ones who truly benefited were the cleric's companions. But thinking was just thinking. This thing wasn't easy to take. After all, Narrow Shadow and the others were a big guild in Waterside City. They had legitimate businesses on the beach. They didn't care about robbing people, but if they really did it, it would have a bad reputation. Very, very bad. If a little kid asked, "Who are the bad guys and who are the good guys?" they would definitely be labeled as the bad guys. For a guild, their image was very important. No matter how much Narrow Shadow wanted this magic staff, he had to think about it carefully. He couldn't just snatch it so openly. At this time, young Master Han helped him open up a new line of thought. Why not take advantage of the fact that these fellows were also suspected of causing trouble at the wine stall and kill them all? When they dropped the equipment, no one could say anything. Narrow Shadow's eyes lit up, but then he felt that in this world full of scandals, this method could at most trick a little kid. Han family young master saw Narrow Shadow's cautiousness again. He smiled and said, "Guild leader Narrow Shadow, if you think it's not suitable, why don't you let us do it for you? After all, we're going to kill these people. You just need to help us secretly and give us the support we need." Narrow Shadow's heart clenched, but Han family young master only smiled in his heart. He said he would help, but that was only on the surface. They had just met by chance, and Narrow Shadow had no reason to believe that these people would be so kind as to give such a high-quality equipment to him after they dropped it. The young master of the Han family didn't think that Narrow Shadow was that naive. The main point of his words was that they were definitely going to kill this group of people. This was actually a message to Narrow Shadow. If you want the Staff of Resurrection, you won't have a chance in the future, because Han family young master and the others would most likely get it today. If painting Narrow Shadow was more suspicious, he might even think that they were here for the staff. After all, the young master of the Han family who had been talking was coincidentally a priest. Also, with this sense of competition, Narrow Shadow would definitely think that they weren't the only ones who had seen this skill on the beach. And they weren't the only ones who were drooling over it. To prevent any accidents from happening, it was best to snatch the staff as soon as possible. If they had to worry about their face and image now, others would definitely take advantage of it. Han family young master didn't say much, but his words were very effective. Also, some of them were just Narrow Shadow's own thoughts after some guidance. If it was said that people would be suspicious of the persuasion of others, then no one would doubt their own inner thoughts. In just an instant, Narrow Shadow had already made up his mind. He laughed and said, "Brother, you're right. I really shouldn't let these people go so easily. Then let's part ways here. I'll go back to work." Narrow Shadow said this thoughtlessly and immediately left with his companions. Han family young master smiled warmly. Everything was under control. The other 4 experts silently watched the process of Han family young master's guidance. After all, they had been in contact with Han family young master for a long time, so they could more or less understand some of his thoughts. However, there were differences among the 4. Sword Demon was the most familiar with Han family young master, so he naturally understood everything. Brother Yu was meticulous and knew the ways of the world. As for Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming, they understood at the start. They knew that Han family young master wanted the people of this guild to attack Jian Nanyu. However, they couldn't understand the meaning behind the last sentence. At that moment, when they saw the other party abandon them and leave in a hurry, the 2 of them were confused. Should we help? The 2 of them really stopped thinking about helping Narrow Shadow's guild to get equipment. Naturally, a round of ridicule from the young master of the Han clan was unavoidable. The 2 of them were already used to it. Comparing these things with the young master of the Han clan was like comparing knives with Gu Fei. It was very unrealistic. No wonder this guy ran away as soon as he could. Yutian Shenming sighed after understanding the truth. Of course, Narrow Shadow would disappear quickly. The 5 people in front of him were no longer friends, but competitors. He had to find Jian Nanyu's group first. At the same time, he couldn't reveal anything about himself to these 5 people. So even Han family young master couldn't guess what he would do. He could only design his next step. Chapter 410. What should we do next? Unscathed in battle, asked Han family young master. Warrior camp, Han family young master said. Oh, wait for them? That's one way. Brother, you nodded. But those guys might not be able to deal with Jian Nanyu, Sword Demon said. Sword Ghost said. After all, he had fought with 4 of Jian Nanyu's group of 7 before, so he had some understanding of their strength. We don't have confidence in them, but we should have confidence in Qianli. Han family young master said. Oh, right. Everyone nodded. Don't we need to send someone to the priest academy? Unscathed in battle suddenly asked after walking a few steps. Han family young master immediately looked at him with disdain. Unscathed in battle suddenly felt ashamed. He knew that Han family young master had seen through his thoughts. Unexpectedly, Han family young master sighed and said, Danqing and Narrow Shadow's focus is on priests. The priest academy will definitely send a lot of people there. We won't be able to snatch anything even if we stay there. Let's forget about it. Unscathed in battle still felt ashamed. He had thought that Han family young master was so pure. He shouldn't have done that. After that, there were no more objections. The 5 of them walked towards the warrior camp. Just as they were about to arrive, Imperial Sky God Ming's sharp eyes pointed to the 2 people at the foot of the wall beside the door. Those 2 people look very familiar. The 2 people at the foot of the wall were a sorcerer and a fighter. Although the sorcerer wasn't wearing a black robe, they were old friends. They could basically recognize them from their figures. The few of them looked at each other and walked forward. Gradually, they saw that it was Gu Fei and 100 Generations Jingluan. The 2 of them also saw the 5 of them and were surprised. The Han family young master was quick-witted and instantly understood what was going on. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He pointed at Gu Fei and scolded. You bastard! Gu Fei's mind was not slow and he quickly understood. Naturally, he could only smile bitterly. After the others understood what was going on, they looked at each other. In the end, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Only the Han family young master became serious again at this moment. His face darkened as he said, We're here to inspect the work. Is this how people we hired do things? Wow. Shameless. Brother Yu and the rest were deeply impressed. To be able to act so righteous in an instant, the Han family young master is really not an ordinary person. The encyclopedic statesman was immediately affected by the aura. He felt that his behavior was indeed inappropriate. This kind of work style of picking on the weak and fearing the strong was unacceptable. Gu Fei asked, Where's Jian Nanyu? Where is he now? Wow. This side was awesome too. Brother Yu and the rest were impressed again. Gu Fei directly ignored the Han family young master's righteous rebuke. He used such a direct method to change the topic. Only Gu Fei could display such a strong aura. Where was Jian Nanyu? This was a question that everyone was concerned about, but no one knew the answer to. Speaking of which, it was really sad. Both sides were anxiously looking for each other, but they couldn't find each other in such a huge main city. Who asked them to not be in love? They didn't have that kind of coincidence. Are we waiting for Jian Nanyu here? Unscathed in battle asked. Sword Demon shook his head. I don't think those guys have the ability to send Jian Nanyu here. Did you hear that? Why are you still standing here after hearing that? Go and find Jian Nanyu. Han family young master scolded Gu Fei. The Han family young master and the rest were the employers, the bosses. It was natural for them to urge their employees to do things. However, the problem was that Bai Yen Jingluan was the employee they hired. In fact, they should be yelling at Bai Yen Jingluan. However, Gu Fei was stuck in the middle. Naturally, the Han family young master vented his anger on his acquaintance. Bai Yen Jingluan was already embarrassed that he was caught waiting in the warrior camp. At this time, the Han family young master was yelling at Gu Fei. Of course, he heard it and felt even more embarrassed. He quickly set off again. However, he didn't know which way to go, so he could only choose a random street. Gu Fei sighed. Wouldn't it be better to wait here for the rabbit? 2-3 times he could kill as many times as he wanted. But now, he could only let them take advantage of the situation. It couldn't be helped. After all, they were the employers. This was a classic case of capitalists exploiting surplus value. Helpless, Gu Fei left with by Yanjingluan. After a few steps, Fireball sent a message asking, Brother Zue, what's going on? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the rest took almost all the alcohol in the wine stall. In the end, they weren't in a hurry to leave. Instead, they asked around the wine stall for information. This was the same as the Han family young masters group, so they immediately knew the ins and outs of the matter. Jiannanyu, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka mumbled. This guy just dropped out of the top 5. It seems like he died in Brother Zue's hands. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Being dirty was being dirty. Being shameless was being shameless. These guys were also veterans of the game. Their analysis wasn't much worse than Young Masters Elite Group's experts, especially Boundless Mang, who was an expert in PK disputes. So that guy is here to kill Jiannanyu, Boundless Mang said. Jiannanyu is suffering. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Everyone in Cloud City knew that Gu Fei was the one who killed Non-Smiler. One could imagine the fate of Gu Fei's target. Do you need our help? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Fireball was obviously the most familiar with Gu Fei among them. He immediately sent a message to Gu Fei. Let me ask. What's up? What's up? Gu Fei replied to Fireball. Han family young master was right. Killing someone was as easy as lifting a finger for Gu Fei. It didn't matter if the opponent was a level 11 newbie, who just got out of PK protection, or a member of the top 5. To Gu Fei, it wasn't a problem at all. About you and Jiannanyu, Fireball said. Oh, Gu Fei finally understood. It's nothing. I just killed him. How did you know? We're all in Linshui City. Do you need help? Fireball replied. Gu Fei was about to reply no need, when he suddenly thought of something. He didn't need their help to kill someone, but he was looking for someone. The more people there were, the more power there was. So he quickly asked, Are you all here? Yes. Brother Zue is at your disposal. Fireball replied with confidence. Good. Do you know Jiannanyu? Gu Fei asked. Fireball asked his brothers and gave Gu Fei a clear answer. I don't know him. Let's meet up. Both sides agreed on a coordinate and met up in the city. Aeon Jingu? He knew that Gu Fei was teaming up with a Grandmaster of Combat, but he didn't expect it to be Aeon Jingu. He was surprised to see him. Hello. Aeon Jingu greeted him when he saw that he knew him. He then whispered to Gu Fei, Who's this? A woman. Gu Fei's answer was very general. Brother Zue, tell me, how are you going to deal with Jiannanyu? Sakurazuka Tsukasa's body was always straight in front of the boundless wilderness. If he covered his face, he would look very righteous. Hey. Aeon Jingu whispered to Gu Fei. So many people are helping? Will we be able to get the money? If you really want to share it with so many people, why don't you say it louder? Gu Fei replied softly. Aeon Jingu immediately shut up. What are you two mumbling about? Aeon Jingu said. The key now is to find Jiannanyu. Even the Han family young master was helpless against Aeon Jingu's direct way of changing the topic. Aeon Jingu could only be defeated. Oh, Brother Zue still doesn't know where he is? Someone said. Of course. If Brother Zue knows, he won't be alive. Fireball smacked the idiot. I don't know yet. Gu Fei smiled. That's why I need everyone to help me look for him. You don't have to do anything. Just let me know when you find him. Brother Zue, you don't have to be so courteous with us. We'll help you take him down if you find him. There's no need for that. There's really no need for that, Gu Fei said. But the problem is that we don't know him. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. He's not alone. There's a total of 7 of them. Other than Jiannanyu, there's a sorcerer, a thief, an archer, a knight and 2 priests. Gu Fei roughly described the outfits of the group of 7. It's troublesome to find one person, but it should be easy to find a group like this, right? Everyone nodded. Thank you for your hard work. Do you have any questions? Gu Fei said. I do. A guy raised his hand. After everyone looked at him, he looked at Gu Fei expectantly. Brother Zue, are there any beauties among the 7? Oh, everyone mumbled and looked at Gu Fei expectantly. Their expectant gazes made Gu Fei feel like he had let everyone down. because the answer would disappoint them. No, they're all men. Oh, unexpectedly, everyone had a relieved expression on their faces. That's good. There won't be any obstacles when we make our move. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. All right. Everyone split up and look for him. Don't make a move after you find him. Let me know first. After Tsubasa Sakuratsuka gave the order, everyone scattered in all directions. The search for Jian Nanyu in Linshui City had begun. The rest of your mercenary group is here. Didn't you see them? Meng Meng asked Gu Fei. I saw them, Gu Fei said. Meng Meng looked around and didn't see any traces of the 5 people. He made a bold guess. Are they in the warrior camp? Smart, Gu Fei praised. I'm just familiar with my job, Meng Meng said indifferently. Gu Fei smiled. He patted the 100 Lives scripture and said, Let's go look too. Do you need my help? Meng Meng asked. No need. Gu Fei smiled. The target is Jian Nanyu alone. I have enough magic power. Meng Meng nodded. He casually picked a direction and went to look for Jian Nanyu's group of 7. At the same time, the ferry at Linshui City's level 40 training area slowly docked. A large group of players disembarked and quickly rushed into Linshui City. Chapter 411. This group of players was clearly divided into 2 groups. It did not seem like a party that was going out to level up. A regular party that went out to level up would at most have around 10 people. However, these 2 groups were more than that. It was just that one group had more people than the other. The 2 groups noticed each other, but they did not have time to think about it. Both sides had their own things to do, so they went their separate ways after entering the city. One of them was a group of robbers who had returned to deal with Gu Fei, while the other was a group of members from Green Narrow Shadows Guild. They had returned on the same ship after receiving the order to gather, and were now going to join their respective bosses. The robbers did not dare to make a move because of the presence of 100 Lives Jingles. However, they had finally gathered around 70 people. 100 Lives Jingles should be able to deal with 70 people by himself, right? It was the first time in the robbers' career that they had gathered 70 people to do the same thing. After investing so much manpower, the boss of the robbers swore to blow up Gu Fei and the encyclopedic classics until nothing was left. Search the city for these 2. If you find them, immediately notify everyone and surround them. The boss gave the order, and the operation began. On the other side, Green Narrow Shadows Guild was level 5. Total members, 750. It was a weekend afternoon, and it was quite a peak period. There were around 500 players online. Since Green Narrow Shadow already had the evil intention of looting the Staff of Resurrection, he might as well go all the way. He mobilized his entire guild. At this moment, there were around 400 members of Narrow Shadows Guild returning to Waterside City from all directions. If the robbers could be considered a criminal gang, then their numbers could be considered a terrorist organization. However, they were still a guild, not a professional robber group. Therefore, Green Narrow Shadow did not dare to directly say that they were going to loot people. His excuse to his subordinates was that the people who caused trouble at the wine stall were looking for people in the city. Green Narrow Shadow had to guarantee that he and his trusted subordinates would carry out the task of looting people and looting equipment. He did not expect that there would be people who dared to cause trouble at the beach tavern. Green Narrow Shadow's guild members were infuriated by Green Narrow Shadow. They began to search the city in groups of 3 to 5. Their leader is Jian Nan, and they have a lot of people. They're very strong. Don't attack recklessly when you encounter them. Inform me first. Narrow Shadow reminded the members. Everyone was self-aware. When they heard that the opponent was actually such an expert, they knew that their small group was definitely not a match for him, so they all nodded in agreement. What about painting Narrow Shadow? The main force had already gone to the cleric camp, and a few of them were left behind. They were prepared to lead the shrimp soldiers and crab generals to drown Wandering Sword's group of 7 in a sea of players. The target was a priest, so he definitely wouldn't have any PK value. Painting Narrow Shadow knew this very well, so the possibility of him dropping the Staff of Resurrection so accurately was too low. The real fight would begin in the priest's school. Narrow Shadow thought over his plan in detail, and felt that he had already predicted everything, no matter how big or small. Even if those bastards wanted to snatch it from him, how could they possibly win against the sea of players in their guild? If you push me too far, I'll go all the way and kill all of you as well. Narrow Shadow thought happily. He suddenly realized that killing people was actually such an exciting thing. He was already a little addicted to it even before he killed them. He couldn't help but want to kill a few more. Jian Nan's group of 7 strolled around the city. He hadn't come up with a plan yet. The Video Mage and 100 Lives strategist were both unknown terrors. Jian Nan wasn't sure if the 7 of them could take them down in a head-on fight. Moreover, after taking a hug throw and a double flame flash, Jian Nan realized that 100 Lives strategist's hug throw wasn't that scary. But the Video Mage's double flame flash was too strong. Jian Nan asked for Flaming Cloak stats, and Flaming Cloak was ashamed. The maximum damage of his double flame flash was as disgusting as paper compared to the Video Mage's. Everyone shuddered at the thought. This was a misconception that people who had just encountered Gu Fei would fall into. If double flame flash's damage was so high, how strong were his other spells? What they didn't know was that double flame flash was Gu Fei's strongest move. The other spells were weaker than the other. These two are really hard to deal with when they work together. It's best if we can separate them, Jian Nan said. The 7 of them thought of this as they walked, and they had already walked through 2 streets. As expected of the elites of the robbers, they often did this kind of work that others hated. The 7 of them were very careful. Painting Narrow Shadow's normal guilds weren't professional when it came to stalking people, but the 7 of them had actually noticed them. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. There's a rogue behind us. He might be following us, Blackwater said in the channel. The 7 of them stopped and looked back. They didn't even need to look. A rogue behind them immediately panicked and revealed himself. His unprofessional stalking skills left him at a loss the moment he was discovered by the target. The 7 of them looked at each other. Based on this performance, the 7 of them felt that such a character definitely wasn't a threat to them. Jian Nan wanted to ask what was going on, but as soon as he took a step, the other person immediately turned around and ran. Glue wanted to shoot, but because there were too many players on the street, it wasn't easy to shoot. He watched as the other person ran away. Who is it? The 7 of them frowned. Jian Nan looked at Dao Xiangmu. Everyone came to a realization. As expected of a robber, he understood things quickly from a professional point of view. It wasn't that Jian Nan didn't think that the Staff of Revival would be coveted, but he didn't think that someone would act so quickly. According to his thoughts, this news would at least spread before the robbers came. How would he know that someone was secretly fanning the flames, causing this to happen ahead of time? But that person doesn't seem like a professional. Blackwater said. Jian Nan nodded. With that level of stalking, if he was a professional, he would be worried about the future of his profession. If he wasn't a professional, it would only be more troublesome. The 7 of them quickly came to a consensus. Every profession had its own secrets. For people like Jian Nan, who were in this profession, they always kept a low profile in mind. The higher the profession, the more low profile they had to be. But for a group of amateurs to run this profession, would they understand why they had to be low profile, and what it meant to be low profile? If they weren't low profile, then they would naturally be arrogant. In the game, the capital to be arrogant was usually having a lot of people. The 7 of them looked up and saw a large group of players suddenly appearing in front of them. They turned around and saw that there were more than 100 of them. Run! The 7 of them turned around and ran. Fire Beacon City. Huarini roared and unleashed his Fire Beacon City. Flames rose from the ground and blocked the entire street. When the players on the street saw a sudden fight, some ran away while others stood to the side, ready to watch the show. After using this spell, Fiery Cloak chased after the 6 of them. The people from Green Narrow Guild rushed to the front of Fire Beacon City. They didn't know what spell this was, but a thief bravely wanted to rush over. However, the moment he stepped into the fire wall, he disappeared with a chi sound. Everyone was shocked. They didn't think that the damage of this fire wall would be so high. Separated by the fire wall and so many players, they couldn't even see which direction the 7 of them ran to. You guys stay here and wait for the firewall to disappear before continuing. Everyone else follow me. The leader assigned the brawny strength-type players to stay behind while the speed-type players went around the other side. Jiannan's group of 7 was quite experienced in running away. They went through every intersection and turned around at every fork. The pursuers had been thrown off. However, no one knew if there were any more obstructions ahead. Which guild are they from? Blackwater angrily asked. Only guilds could gather more than 100 people. I think it's Green Narrow Guild. Glue saw the guild insignia that some of them were wearing on their chests. Jiannan was startled. Is the place we were drinking at today Green Narrows? Definitely. Fiery Cloak said. So it's these guys. It seems like they are using this as an excuse to kill us. What do we do now? Everyone looked at Jiannan. Normal people would think that going offline was the safest method, but from the perspective of bandits, going offline was the most dangerous. At this moment, there would definitely be people guarding the offline area. It wouldn't be hard for the 7 of them to break through this defense, but it would completely expose their whereabouts. Staying in the offline area and waiting for their targets to come back online was the most common task for Jiannan's group during their career. This was because too many people thought that going offline was absolutely safe. They didn't know that when they came back online, an even more meticulous and perfect pursuit would be waiting for them. Of course, going offline on the spot was invincible, but the system had already told them not to go offline on the spot. Going against the system was the most dangerous thing in the game, so the 7 of them didn't even think about doing this. At this moment, they had to get rid of the enemies and make them lose track of their whereabouts. Leave Waterfront City. After thinking for a bit, Jiannan finally gritted his teeth and made this decision. After the Staff of Revival was exposed, Jiannan had already put the matter of leaving Waterfront City on the agenda, but he didn't expect it to be this fast. Then the video mage. Let's give up for now. Where there's life, there's hope, Jiannan said. The other 6 nodded. Let's go. The 7 of them made up their minds and continued to move forward through the streets. The streets they chose were very narrow, enough for Huaningi to completely seal off Fire Beacon City. Brother Zue. On the other side, Gu Fei had already received a call. Did you find anything? Gu Fei replied. That Jiannan, it seems like you aren't the only one looking for him. There are many people looking for him. How many people? I just saw over 100 people. Oh, let's not talk about that. Where is he now? I'm following him. I'll send you the coordinates. The people from Green Narrow Guild were indeed not experienced in tracking, but the brothers from Eternal Life Among Flowers were all experts in this field. Even though they weren't robbers, they often followed a girl or chased after a beauty, so they were even more skilled in this field than robbers. Therefore, it was very reasonable to say that all roads lead to Rome. Whether it was chasing after beauties or professional robbers, they could all be trained to be good at tracking. At this moment, this spy under Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was skillfully following behind the 7 of them. Butterfly knot. Will Jiannan be able to smoothly escape Waterfront City? Will teacher Gu Fei be able to successfully intercept him? Stay tuned, cough. Chapter 412. Gu Fei kept receiving the coordinates and immediately called out to 100 Lives Jingluan. Quick, over here. There's news? Of course, 100 Lives Jingluan was happy. He was the one making the money. Hurry up. Gu Fei shouted as he dashed out. Unfortunately, 100 Lives Jingluan didn't add all his points into dexterity, and the shoes on his feet weren't as good as Gu Fei's. His speed was 2 levels lower than Gu Fei's. Why are you so slow? Gu Fei yelled at 100 Lives Jingluan, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Most of the companions who fought alongside him were slender-waist dancers, and the scene was always slender-waist dancers dashing out like a wisp of smoke and turning back to roar at him. Why are you so slow? Today, Gu Fei finally enjoyed this kind of treatment. Unfortunately, he could slow down when he was fast, but he couldn't speed up when he was slow. Although Gu Fei complained he could only slow down and coordinate with 100 Lives Jingluan's speed. The 2 of them chased after the coordinates that were sent to them. The coordinates weren't only sent to Gu Fei. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, and the other members of the mercenary group were constantly being broadcasted in the channel. Everyone rushed over to help Gu Fei. At this time, Linshui City was in a bit of a storm. People could be seen flashing by with weapons at any time. The curious players were all asking around what was going on. At this time, the experts of the child elite group were calmly waiting in the warrior camp. There should have been 5 people, but now, without Brother Yu, there were only 4 left. Brother Yu, why are you taking so long? Han family young master looked at the time, and then at the few players who were hurriedly flashing by. It seems like it's starting. Ask Qianli how it's going, Han family young master said. The other 3 looked at him. Why don't you ask yourself? Although the Han family young master was indeed the guild leader, and they usually acted according to the Han family young master's plans, they were all experts and had their own pride. They did not like the way the Han family young master ordered his secretary around. Han family young master could only ask himself helplessly. In the end, Gu Fei only replied with one word, busy. This kid is quite efficient. It's starting so soon? Han family's young master mumbled. Qianli has found Azure Blade? Unscathed in battle, who was crouching at the foot of the wall, immediately stood up and raised his weapon. Being found by Gu Fei meant death. Therefore, their battle should be starting soon. How can it be so fast? The show hasn't even started yet. Han family young master seemed to have some complaints about Gu Fei finding Azure Blade so quickly. Don't worry about it. Let's get ready. Sword Demon took out his dagger and stood outside the door in stealth. Every single person who appeared in the safe zone after a flash of white light did not escape his eyes. I'm going to. Yutian Shunming carried his 3 bows and climbed up the building. He found a good shooting spot. What about me? Unscathed in battle asked Han family young master. Same as always. Protect me. Han family young master replied. Azure Blade's group of 7 arrived at Waterside City's 14th Street after many twists and turns. Along the way, they looked around. Whenever they saw a player running at full speed, they felt that the player might be targeting them and immediately turned around. They could have reached their destination in a straight line, but their experience allowed them to successfully evade Green Narrow Guild's pursuit. Moreover, the journey was long and unpredictable. The lurker who followed eternal life in the bushes had a hard time chasing after them. Finally, he was discovered by the other 7 players. The 7 of them pretended not to notice, and stopped after turning a corner at an intersection. The poor lurker was unaware. He immediately increased his speed when he saw the other party turning around. However, when he reached the corner, Azure Blade had already swung his sword at him. Although his head did not fall off, he was already dead. The spy who sacrificed himself heroically sent out one last piece of information, one last set of coordinates. Only then did he inform everyone that he had been discovered, and that he had died. I'm sorry, brother. Gu Fei was deeply apologetic, but he did not know what to say. On the other hand, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the others were gloating. This was the atmosphere of the team. In daily life, this was called corporate culture. Don't worry, brother Zui, do your best. This brat was very magnanimous in replying to Gu Fei's message. He even sent greetings to all the ancestors of his teammates. Don't worry, I'll definitely take care of him. Gu Fei felt that he could only let Azure Blade feel the value of his sacrifice by killing him. At this moment, Gu Fei and Azure Blade were not far from the coordinates of the last teleportation. They quickly rushed to the corner of the street. After seeing that the coordinates were correct, they turned to the right and immediately saw Azure Blade's group of 7 rushing out of the street. It's here! 100th Era strategist cheered as he rushed over. He clearly did not take the cruel duel seriously. He thought that it was as easy as killing an ant. He had the same thought process as Gu Fei. With his sword in hand, how could Gu Fei's speed be slow? Azure Blade's group of 7 was about to rush out of the street to welcome the dawn, but they did not expect to meet these 2 fiends. They did not dare to fight head-on, so they could only choose to retreat. Fire beacon wall. Hua Renyi used the same trick, and unleashed a wall of fire across the street. He was about to turn around and chase after his 6 brothers who had already run away, but the 6 of them shouted at the same time. Fuck! Hua Renyi's fire beacon wall blocked their path, But Gu Fei also unleashed an electric wall at the same time. Just for the sake of Flaming Cloak, they had purposely chosen a narrow street like this. In the end, they had shot themselves in the foot. Through their careful selection, Gu Fei's wall of electricity had become a perfect barrier. Under his fame, no one dared to try Gu Fei's spell. They could only stay still and hope that Gu Fei's electric wall would disappear before Huareni's fire beacon wall. Fuck. When the 6 of them were staring at the electric wall, they suddenly heard Huareni shout. They turned around and were stunned. The perfect barrier in their minds was nothing but trash in front of Gu Fei and the 100 Reincarnation Grandmaster. Gu Fei raised his finger and used a teleportation to flash past Fire Beacon Wall. What was even more ridiculous was that the 100 Reincarnation Grandmaster, who was still a bit away from Fire Beacon Wall, suddenly ran diagonally towards the wall. He then used a few steps to reach the roof. Even Fengxing could use this technique, not to mention the 100 Reincarnation Grandmaster. He didn't even use the Flying Swallow Slash and directly ran up. He went around the wall of fire and flew down in one breath. At this time, he used the Flying Swallow Slash to slash down towards Jian Nanyo's head. Jian Nanyo's counterattack was not slow. He raised his shield above his head, and the 100 Reincarnation Grandmaster's kick landed on the shield. If it was an ordinary player, this would be the end. But what kind of skill was the 100 Reincarnation Grandmaster? This kick landed on the shield, but the follow-up attack had already arrived. His body dropped down from the sky while his other leg kicked straight at Jian Nanyo's chest. Jianan hastily retreated. Blackwater and the other knight turned pale with fright as they hurriedly went forward to steady him. Jian Nanyu turned around, and was also scared. If he took 2 more steps back, he would have reached Gu Fei's electric wall. Would he still be alive if he touched it? On the other side, Gu Fei teleported over and conveniently lifted his leg to kick Flaming Cloak. Flaming Cloak was already lucky. Gu Fei used electric wall and teleportation, so he only had 1 dual flame flash left. He wanted to save it for Jian Nanyu, so he didn't want to use it. Otherwise, he would have used a big move and Flaming Cloak would have been destroyed by now. At this time, the 100 Reincarnation Grandmaster had just finished kicking Jian Nanyu. Gu Fei flew past him and went straight for Jian Nanyu. Jian Nanyu had just regained his footing and was still afraid of that kick, but Gu Fei had already arrived like a wolf or tiger. Jian Nanyu's body was still leaning back with Blackwater on the left and the knight on the right supporting him. In this position, if Gu Fei used the dual flame flash to slash forward, it would definitely kill 3 people. The 3 wanted to resist, but they didn't know if they could make it in time. Gu Fei also thought that he was about to succeed, but he suddenly noticed a dazzling red light flashing in front of him. Gu Fei's reflexes were too strong. He forcefully stopped his forward momentum and stomped on the ground in the opposite direction. His body quickly floated back. At the same time, another electric wall rose from the ground. Gu Fei turned around and saw Flaming Cloak, who was still on the ground, stubbornly raising his staff. At this critical moment, he saved the lives of Jian Nanyu's group of 3. Flaming Cloak was forced to do this. He could see that if he didn't do this, then Jian Nanyu's group wouldn't be able to resist. However, this obstruction also pushed the 6 of them into a desperate situation. The 6 of them were sandwiched between the Fire Beacon City and the electric wall, so their space was extremely limited. Gu Fei was a sorcerer. His area of effect spell had nowhere to dodge. However, there was no time to think about this at this point. They could only wait and see how much damage this sorcerer could inflict. Flaming Cloak's gamble really hit Gu Fei's weak spot. His area of effect spell was indeed not as powerful as the dual flame flash. Moreover, he could only use 1 area of effect spell at this moment. Was it a heavenly descent or a fire tree? Flaming Cloak nervously stared at Gu Fei, hoping that he could give his brothers the most important hint. But at this time, 100 Era's Jingluan was right next to him. He bent down and used a back throw to throw Huareni into his Fire Beacon Citadel while he was still in the position of being thrown. Flames soared to the sky. After being thrown, Flaming Cloak couldn't stop this enchanting flame and died in an instant. He didn't even have time to give his brothers a hint. However, with his death, this hint became unimportant. Although this throw from 100 Reincarnations Jingluan killed Flaming Cloak, it was actually a failure. At this time, if it was Slender Waist Dance or any other expert from the Child Elite group, they would definitely rush in front of Gu Fei to help him block the arrows shot by the enemy archer to interrupt Gu Fei's spell casting. This would allow Gu Fei to smoothly complete his chant and blast the 6 people in the gap. However, 100 Reincarnations Jingluan's throw not only prevented Gu Fei from casting spells, but because of Flaming Cloak's death, Fire Beacon City was immediately unharmed. How could the 6 veterans miss this opportunity? They immediately rushed out from behind the electric wall. Chapter 413. 100th Era Strategist had the ability to fight against multiple opponents at once, so he didn't need to cooperate with others. Even in team battles, most of his companions were grandmasters of combat, so he had no experience in cooperating with other classes. When the 6 of them rushed out of the fire, 100th Era Strategist didn't even know that it was caused by his flaming cloak. After crossing the wall of fire, Bladesman charged toward Gu Fei. His escape route was completely blocked, so what other choice did he have other than to charge forward? Azuma charged forward, while Blackwater circled around Gu Fei's flank with his dagger. Glue released arrows to disrupt Gu Fei's movements. The paladin continuously cast blessing skills on his teammates, increasing their magic defense. Inukagami and the other priest didn't care if their teammates had taken damage or not, and continued to cast healing spells. The 6 of them had practiced this tactic countless times, and countless experts in the game had fallen under their siege. Even Gu Fei didn't dare to be careless. Their 3-pronged attack was almost flawless, but it was a pity that Blackwater, who was ambushing on the left, was slightly slower. What a pity! If this thief's speed was just a little bit faster, he might not have been able to escape from this situation. Gu Fei thought as he flashed to the left. At almost the same time, Bladesman stopped in his tracks and cancelled charge. He extended the shield in his left hand and smashed it toward Gu Fei's face. At the same time, he slashed with the sword in his right hand, and Blackwater arrived on the left. He couldn't use backstab, so he could only use a normal attack. It was still a pincer attack. But to Gu Fei, it wasn't difficult to resolve. His opponent's attack was higher, so he just had to lower his body and use dual flame flash. As Gu Fei was calculating, he suddenly heard 100th Era Strategist shout, "An arrow is coming!" When Gu Fei heard this, he was immediately startled. He quickly turned his body to the side and heard a xiao sound. An arrow flew under Jian Nan's shield and barely grazed the corner of Gu Fei's clothes. So sneaky! Gu Fei broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that the loophole in the previous 3-way pincer attack was actually rehearsed into a trap by these guys. After he stepped into this position, Jian Nan immediately followed up and hit his face with his shield. This was actually to block Gu Fei's sight. Blackwater and Jian Nan were not the main killers of this attack. The real killer move came from Glue. These 2 guys in close combat just came up to divert attention and cover. If not for the reminder from the people beside him, Gu Fei's arrow would have definitely hit its target. But at this time, although he barely dodged it, he also revealed a big flaw. This turn of his body just happened to fall into the arms of the Blackwater attack, and he was fiercely stabbed by the Blackwater. Fortunately, it was only a normal attack, so it was not a big deal. When Gu Fei saw Jian Nan raising his shield to block his face, he knew that it was not wise to continue entangling like this. He quickly retreated a few steps. His field of vision was wide open, and Gu Fei saw that Bai Yanjingluan had already rushed to Glue to solve this threat. But Bai Yanjingluan was very tactically cooperative. The knight desperately tried to stop him. Although he was thrown out by Bai Yanjingluan after a few punches and kicks, at least he had the intention. If it weren't for the 2 abnormal kung fu combinations, Jian Nanyu and the others would not have lost at all. After Bai Yanjingluan threw away the knight, he went to deal with Glue. Of course, Glue was not stupid enough to fight with Bai Yanjingluan. He still had an advantage over Bai Yanjingluan in terms of running away, so he immediately turned around and ran away. It was also at this time that Gu Fei's electric wall disappeared, and Glue had the space to sprint. But his brother was still fighting, so he obviously could not run away. But he thought that if he could lure Bai Yanjingluan away, the remaining people on his side could besiege Gu Fei. It might be a good opportunity, so he turned around and shot arrows to provoke Bai Yanjingluan while running. Unfortunately, Aeon Jingluan was determined. He only wanted to kill Jian Nanyu and make money, so he didn't care about the glue at all. More importantly, the glue's attack was not a threat to him, so he just twisted his body and dodged it. On the other hand, Gu Fei was not at a disadvantage at all, but he only had enough magic power for one double flame flash, so he did not want to waste the good opportunity that he was looking for. Bai Yanjingluan turned around to help, and Inakamu and the other priest tried their best to stop him, but they were easily knocked down by Bai Yanjingluan with one punch and one kick. That priest was so persistent. Even when he was on the ground, he still refused to give up. He nimbly extended his arms to grab Bai Yanjingluan's calf, and shouted at Glue, "Shoot!" This method was considered one of the more controversial PK methods in the game. Get close to the opponent and restrict their movements while enduring the damage. This method was disdained by most experts, but Jian Nanyu and the other 6 obviously did not have such principles. As long as it was beneficial to the outcome, they would choose all the feasible methods. Bai Yanjingluan was also careless. He did not expect his opponent to be so weak that he even had to hug someone's thigh. Glue had already shot 2 arrows when he heard the notification. His sniping skill was temporarily on cooldown, so he used 2 consecutive arrows. The priest was also unforgiving. He had been hugging one of Bai Yanjingluan's legs earlier, but now he seized the opportunity to hug both of Bai Yanjingluan's legs. Bai Yanjingluan did not have the time to struggle, and Glue's 2 consecutive arrows had already arrived. He suddenly stretched out his hands, one in front of the other, and put his palms together, catching both arrows at the same time. Twin dragons playing with pearls. Beautiful. Gu Fei applauded for him. Twin dragons playing with beads was not a move to catch hidden weapons. Bai Yanjingluan made a slight change and used it here, but Gu Fei still easily saw through it. His shout made Jian Nanyu and the others feel a chill in their hearts, especially the one who hugged Glue's thigh. He thought that he had fought for time at all costs, but seeing that Glue still had the leisure to observe the situation, he knew that the cooperation between Jian Nanyu and Blackwater was no threat to the mage at all. It was meaningless for him to hug Glue's thigh. Seeing this situation, Jian Nanyu knew that he was doomed. He could not even run, because apart from Blackwater and Glue, the other 4 had no speed at all. But it was also meaningless to sacrifice 2 more people. Jian Nanyu winked at Blackwater, signaling him to leave first. Blackwater understood Jian Nanyu's intention. Without any hesitation, he immediately turned around and left. At the same time, he waved at Glue, who wanted to shoot another arrow at Bai Yanjingluan. Glue gritted his teeth. After releasing the arrow casually, he also turned around and ran out. The 2 of them turned into the preserved revolutionary tinder one after the other. Jian Nanyu was worried that Gu Fei would obstruct Blackwater, so he was ready to intercept him. Little did he know that Gu Fei did not care about Blackwater leaving at all. Jian Nanyu had long felt that the 2 of them were only targeting him, but he did not know that they were targeting him so clearly. It seemed that as long as he was killed, they were not going to make things difficult for the others. Jian Nanyu looked back, and saw that Bai Yanjingluan had broken free from the one who was hugging Glue's thigh. At this time, he completely ignored the other 3 people and rushed toward him. He immediately winked at the other 3 people, signaling them to leave first. Jian Nanyu decided to hold on a little longer to increase his brother's chances of survival. Unfortunately, this hope was like a bubble. Who could block a blow from Gu Fei and Bai Yanjingluan when they joined forces? Jian Nanyu was blocked by the sword and the shield in front, but Bai Yanjingluan had already approached him and grabbed him. With a wave of his hand, he threw him out. Jian Nanyu was depressed. So what if I die? Why did I die in the same way twice? Just as Gu Fei was about to follow up with a dual flame flash, he suddenly heard the sound of wind whistling past his ears. He didn't have time to take a look, so he hurriedly retreated. 100-era strategist also turned around to dodge. When he looked sideways, a group of players appeared at the intersection of the street. They pointed at Gu Fei and shouted, "He's here." At the same time, the archers' tracking arrows rained down. The sky was filled with fire wheels, and the fire trees on the ground were so hot that they were bubbling. While Gu Fei swung his sword to block the arrows, He ran to dodge the magic that was about to appear. Bai Yanjingluan did the same, but he was more elegant than Gu Fei. He jumped on the wall beside him and flew up to the roof with another swallow slash. Jian Nanyu also put the shield on his head to dodge, but he was cursing in his heart. These guys are really ruthless. He recognized these people. He had hoped to increase Gu Fei's PK value in the warrior camp, but these guys were not rash. They did not act rashly after recognizing the powerful combination of Gu Fei and Bai Yanjingluan. Instead, they officially attacked after they gathered their people. Finally, they found Gu Fei at this critical moment. Their appearance could be considered to have saved Jian Nanyu's life, but he did not feel the slightest bit grateful. These guys threw AoE spells at this area without any scruples, completely ignoring Jian Nanyu's existence. If they all exploded, not only would Gu Fei be finished, but Jian Nanyu would also be finished. The knight and the two priests were about to leave, but this sudden change caused them to stop in their tracks. They hurriedly came to Jian Nanyu's aid. The knight's holy heal and the priest's recovery all landed on Jian Nanyu's body without any hesitation. Jian Nanyu's movements were slow, but with the support of his companions, he stepped out of the sea of fire with the shield on his head. Before he could catch his breath, the flames beside him arrived again. How could Gu Fei be willing to let him go so easily? Just like him, he flashed in this direction. At this moment, he leaped and had already flashed valiantly with double flame flash. Jian Nanyu subconsciously swung his shield to block. If it were any other time, Gu Fei would have a follow-up move. He would use the shield to cut Jian Nanyu's body before activating the spell. However, he did not have the time to do so at this moment. The enemies at the end of the street continued to attack as they approached. All of them were aimed at Gu Fei. Gu Fei wasn't willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of Wandering Swordsman. Thus, when his sword slashed at Wandering Swordsman's shield, he shouted dodge and activated the spell. Seeing Jian Nanyu step out of the sea of fire, Gu Fei also hoped that Jian Nanyu would not be able to withstand his attack. However, his wish did not come true. Jian Nanyu's three brothers were not fake. They used recovery spells to keep Jian Nanyu in high spirits. At this moment, he blocked Gu Fei's attack with his shield and continued to move forward. Gu Fei, on the other hand, was entangled by another wave of arrows and spells. 100 eras. Gu Fei shouted. At this moment, he really did not have the time to deal with Jian Nanyu. He could only do it himself. However, 100 eras statecraft was obviously not able to deal with such a big scene. At this moment, he was standing on the roof safe and sound. However, he did not know whether he should deal with the group of people first or continue to chase after Jian Nanyu. When he heard Gu Fei calling him, he quickly replied loudly, "What?" Chapter 4:14. What? Was just a subconscious response. When Gu Fei called him, he naturally looked in Gu Fei's direction. Then what he saw was Gu Fei, who was flustered by the multiple attacks. Of course, Gu Fei would be flustered. If he could still remain calm in such a situation, he would have the time to deal with Jian Nanyu. At the same time, 100 Lives Grandmaster saw the fleeing Jian Nanyu and immediately came to his senses. He stepped on the roof and chased after Jian Nanyu. 100 Lives Grandmaster's agility did not go to waste. He ran much faster than Jian Nanyu and the others. It did not take him long to catch up. He took a big stride and flew down from the roof like a rock. However, when Jian Nanyu saw 100 Lives Grandmaster chasing after him, he already had a plan in mind. When the figure above his head swayed and 100 Lives Grandmaster was about to land, Jian Nanyu took a step forward and extended his arms to perform the ultimate move of the warrior, Whirlwind Slash. Even Gu Fei had suffered a great loss from this move, especially after he became a two-handed berserker. The Whirlwind Slash performed with both hands was equivalent to changing directions and doubling the speed of the rotation. Even Gu Fei did not dare to say that he was 100% sure that he could take it on. At that moment, 100 Lives Grandmaster was in mid-air. The Grandmaster of Combat did not have a weapon and could not use the techniques that Gu Fei often used. When Gu Fei turned around and saw the situation, he felt that 100 Lives Grandmaster was in trouble. Then, 100 Lives Grandmaster rubbed his palms together and formed a palm with one hand to slap the sharp wind created by the whirlwind slash. Was he trying to catch Jian Yu's spinning sword? Gu Fei knew that the Grandmaster of Combat's weapon was a glove. It did not seem to be a problem for him to directly clash with the opponent's sword. However, the problem was that there was an absolute difference in strength between the two. Even if he caught the sword in the whirlwind slash, 100 Lives' Grandmaster of Combat's strength would not be able to interrupt the warrior's whirlwind slash. Would it not be even more embarrassing if he was thrown into the air by the whirlwind slash? While Gu Fei was thinking about this, the two sides had already collided. The moment the palm of the 100-generation statecraft came into contact with Jian Nan's whirlwind slash, a water droplet the size of a wash basin suddenly spat out from his palm. The water droplet immediately shattered into a cloud of mist when the blade of the sword came into contact with it. At the same time, the 100-generation statecraft was also bounced up in the air, drawing a perfect arc as he flew over the roof and landed on the street next door. Jian Nan was only stunned for a moment. This was not a good time to think. He immediately dispelled his skill and ran away with the other three brothers. He looked back at Gu Fei and saw that he was too busy with the robbers to care about him. Jian Nan finally heaved a sigh of relief. At that moment, Jian Nanyu was sure that the 100 reincarnation classics had used a skill. He had never seen this skill before, but he could make a rough guess. This should be the first skill that a Grandmaster of Combat would have after advancing to Chi Master at level 40. Chi Wave Shield. There were very few Grandmasters of Combat, and there were even fewer high-level ones. Among the high-level ones, there were even fewer who could advance to Chi Master. This was because the other path of advancement, the Striker, was a continuation of the previous Grandmaster of Combat's development of combo attacks. It was mainly based on high-speed, close-range attacks. It was obviously cooler, so it was more favored. The path of Chi Master was currently only seen in some official information. Jian Nan had never come into contact with it in the game. He did not expect the leader of the Grandmasters of Combat, 100 Lives Classic, to advance to Chi Master. Looking at it this way, 3 of the original 5 roaches had taken the non-mainstream path. Although the officials claimed that each class had its own characteristics and was absolutely balanced, balance did not change the player's preferences. For example, the archer who had advanced to sharpshooter, the thief who had advanced to assassin, the warrior who had advanced to violent warrior, and even the striker who had advanced to Grandmaster of Combat. These paths of advancement were obviously more aggressive. Most players liked these classes, so the overall proportion of people who had advanced to this path was higher. However, among the original 5 roaches, Slender Waist Dancer had advanced to Godly Thief, Deep Waters had advanced to Lurker, and now 100 Lives Classic had advanced to Chi Master. At this moment, Jian Nan could not help but think of Gu Fei. Although he was not one of the 5 roaches, he was obviously stronger than the 5 roaches. He was also a lightning mage, which was relatively rare among mages. A bunch of non-mainstream. Jian Nanyu cursed bitterly as he ran. At this moment he was finally free. He immediately messaged Flaming Coat, who had died earlier, and Blackwater and Glue, who had escaped earlier. Although he was embarrassed by the 2 of them, it was still a good thing that he had only sacrificed 1 person in the end. Flaming Coat, how are you doing? Jian Nan asked Flaming Coat. Although the battle was complicated, it had only lasted for 2 to 3 minutes. At this moment, Flaming Coat had just revived in the Mage Academy. He glanced at the situation and replied, "I'm at the Mage Academy. There are indeed people here, but not many. I walked out of the revival point and no one noticed me." "Then you should go alone. We'll meet at XXX outside the city." Jian Nan replied to Flaming Coat, and turned his gaze to his 5 companions. "Let's split up too." Split up? Dao Xiangmu was shocked. He was only a cleric. How could he protect himself if he went alone? Jian Nan nodded. "Fuck, I should have thought of this earlier. If we move together, we'll attract too much attention. That's why we're so easily noticed. If we go alone, we'll be less of a target, and it'll be easier for us to escape." The 5 of them were enlightened. Actually, it was impossible for the enemy to recognize each and every one of them. It was just too eye-catching if they gathered together. Let's split up and find a way. We'll meet at XXX outside the city, Jiannan said. The 5 of them nodded. You two be careful. Jiannan gave his last warning to Dao Xiangmu and the other cleric. Clearly, with their identities and abilities, they needed to bear a greater risk. Splitting up would be the most stressful for them. However, the 2 of them did not have any objections. Jian Nanyo's group of 7 was also very loyal to each other. However, they never thought that there was a need to live and die together. The greatest benefit or the smallest loss was what they valued. You be careful too. The 2 clerics gave Jiannan the same warning. The risk Jiannan had to bear was actually not lower than the 2 of them. He was facing the 2 strongest people they had ever seen in the game. After saying goodbye to each other, they each found their own way and set off. At this moment, on Linshui City's 14th Street, Gu Fei's battle had yet to end. Jiannan's group successfully escaped. The 100 Lives strategist was thrown to another street. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Gu Fei didn't have much magic power left. He was facing a large number of enemies by himself. Arrows chased after him, and spells were everywhere in the sky and on the ground. If it wasn't for the limited attack range of a sorcerer, the other party would have burned the entire street. Although it wasn't to such an extent, Gu Fei's escape route was blocked by the other party. The other party was very experienced. They threw spells at the spot behind Gu Fei. If Gu Fei wanted to dodge and retreat at the same time, he could only step into the bombardment area of the other party's spells. In order to dodge the other party's spells, Gu Fei could only take the initiative to close the distance between him and the other party. However, he also knew that he still had space to dodge. When the distance was close enough, the other party's spells would line up in a row, and he would no longer have any space to hide. Unless the other party's spell control was as haggard as the reborn amethyst. This was obviously unrealistic. The other party was a robber, and they were extremely fierce. He couldn't retreat, and there was nowhere to hide. Taking the initiative to attack was the only way out. Gu Fei also saved himself the trouble of thinking. He suddenly quickened his pace and brandished the Night Streamer sword, charging towards the other party's formation. The other party was extremely surprised. They didn't expect their opponent to have such an imposing aura even when he was alone. Moreover, he was a sorcerer, and he was still so brave as to charge towards them. "Sorcerers, get ready!" the leader shouted. He had been waiting for this opportunity to take down Gu Fei in one fell swoop. The sorcerers raised their staffs high, some pointing to the sky, some pointing to the ground. However, Gu Fei acted as if he had heard an order. He raised the sword in his hand, and the arrows fell to the ground one after another. "Look at the distance. Fire!" The leader gave the order, and all the spells were chanted and fired. At the same time, Gu Fei also summoned a spell, lightning. It was the last spell he could use. There was an explosion of thunder in the sky, and the lightning spell was the first to be summoned. A blue light flashed, and a sorcerer in the opposite formation raised his staff high. It looked like he was summoning lightning himself. The sorcerer was dumbstruck by the lightning, but he didn't die. Gu Fei was also very surprised, but then he remembered that he was wearing the flaming robe, and not the dark robe. At this time, the other sorcerers had already successfully released their spells. The streets and the sky were filled with fire, and only the place that the kid pointed at had a blue sky. And Gu Fei appeared under this blue sky. Although he still had the 1,000 layers flames of the cinder tree under his feet, ordinary sorcerers didn't have the attack power to instantly kill Gu Fei. And even if they did, they might not be able to instantly kill him. Gu Fei had the Wind Chaser's protection, hanging around his neck. Just this equipment alone made his HP twice that of an ordinary sorcerer. Gu Fei, who usually didn't care about how much HP he had, couldn't help but feel that this equipment gave him a sense of security. At this time, Gu Fei was already close to the enemy. The enemy's front row was full of archers, and when they saw the enemy approaching, they immediately dodged to the side. Gu Fei swung his sword left and right. Sometimes there was fire, sometimes there was lightning, and sometimes there was only sword light. He didn't aim to kill anyone, but his current goal was to escape. Behind the archers were the sorcerers. Gu Fei relied on his strength to be more awesome than ordinary sorcerers, and when he got close he used the stained 18 falls technique. 2 sorcerers had already been thrown to the ground by him, and the other sorcerers also dodged chaotically to the side. Like the archers, sorcerers were especially flustered when they were closed in. Behind them were the warriors and thieves, who hadn't had the chance to attack yet. Close combat was their main battlefield. Gu Fei also knew that the difficult breakout had only just begun. A thief came at him head-on, and Gu Fei stabbed out with his sword. There was no suspense in being hit, but the problem was that the damage wasn't enough to make the opponent feel any pressure. Looking at the heavily armored warriors behind him, Gu Fei felt that it would be quite difficult to break through this barrier in this narrow street. As a result, he didn't try to force his way through, and retreated a few steps back to the group of sorcerers and archers. It was better to bully these guys first, and then act according to the situation, Gu Fei thought. Chapter 4:15. The robbers were very depressed. They didn't expect the situation to turn out this way. Those who hadn't fought with Gu Fei face to face wouldn't understand how terrifying his skills were. Most people thought that he was a mage who could instantly kill a lot of people. Judging him like that was too insulting to Gu Fei. For example, a sorcerer without mana was able to cause chaos in a group of people. This was something that had never happened before. Gu Fei shuttled through the group of mages and archers and bullied them. He kept a distance of half a meter from them from time to time. This tactic was a bit despicable. Some of the enemy archers had already run away, but when they turned back to shoot, Gu Fei would dodge and the arrow would hit his own people. Gu Fei used homing arrow. This skill had a long cooldown, and could only be used after a long time. At first, Gu Fei was more ruthless. He even killed a mage with continuous attacks. But he soon found that these mages were actually very good human shields. Normal mages didn't have high agility, so Gu Fei could easily wander around them. So although the warriors and thieves squeezed over, they couldn't find a good opportunity to attack. A thief wanted to get behind Gu Fei? There was always a mage behind Gu Fei. A warrior wanted to use charge or whirlwind. Someone used it, but the result was the same as an archer's arrow. Gu Fei dodged and his own people were sent flying. Spread out, mages, spread out. The enemy leader roared in exasperation. But in this narrow street with walls on both sides, where could they spread out to? Gu Fei had long since seen this point, and took advantage of the terrain to the extreme. But even so, under the cover of the warriors and thieves, the mages gradually moved to the back. These melee classes had been playing hide and seek with Gu Fei for a long time, and had long been suppressed. Now that they could finally fight, they roared and rushed towards Gu Fei. But at this time, Gu Fei turned around and ran. There were archers in front, but when they saw Gu Fei running towards them, they were all at a loss and didn't dare to shoot. Why? Because Gu Fei was not an ordinary person. They had already discovered that he could almost dodge the arrows they released. Previously, it was fine if the arrows missed, but now behind Gu Fei were their own brothers. When Gu Fei dodged, all the arrows hit their own people. At the end of the day, the robbers did not have enough manpower. There were only a dozen or so archers and mages. If there were dozens of them, Gu Fei would have been burned to ashes by the mages or shot into a hornet's nest by the archers. Stop them, stop them. The gang leader roared angrily when he saw how useless his archers were. When the archer saw that his boss had spoken, he thought that even if he shot his own people, his boss would take responsibility, so he immediately shot boldly. As a result, Gu Fei either dodged or pushed them away. In any case, not a single one of them hit him. The bandits chasing behind him kept yelling and cursing. Stop arguing. The gang leader realized that he seemed to have made a small mistake in his command, and he was very unhappy. Hold on to that guy. The boss felt that telling the archers to stop them was simply nonsense, so he simply said it more clearly. The street was only so wide. If the archers lined up in a row, it would not be a problem for them to hold on to Gu Fei. As soon as the shout came out, Gu Fei's heart also tightened. He hurriedly adjusted his footsteps and leaned against the wall. The other side did not understand Gu Fei's intentions, but when Gu Fei ran close to the wall, some of the archers who were diagonally facing him boldly released their arrows. There was a wall behind them, so they were not afraid of accidental injuries. However, Just as Gu Fei was about to come into contact with the archers, the two coming at him had already stretched out their arms, and Gu Fei suddenly stepped on the wall on one side. Gu Fei's strength level wasn't high enough to support him to the roof, but it was enough to support him to jump a little higher than where he stood. Then, with one hand on the wall and the other on the archer's shoulder, Gu Fei leaped over the wall. The archers screamed and turned around, but Gu Fei had already landed on the ground and ran another 3 meters away. Now that there was no one on their side in front, the archers hurriedly began to draw their bows and shoot without restraint. The boss was so angry that he desperately summoned the mage. But did Gu Fei's previous preparations all go to waste? At this time, the mage had already switched to the back of the line, and suddenly had to switch to the front. After a moment of chaos, Gu Fei had already run a distance away, and the mage could no longer use spells to perfectly pave the way for Gu Fei to sprint forward. Chase, chase for me! The boss roared and roared. In fact, Gu Fei's escape was not at all carefree. He knew that he would definitely die in a long battle, so he immediately ran away after disrupting the other side's formation. At this time, he was already fighting with his life on the line. Dodging with his back to the arrows, he was a little careless, and an arrow had already pierced his shoulder. The archers behind him were still shooting as they chased after him, and Gu Fei did not know if he would be exhausted to death by them at this rate. However, there was already a turn in the street ahead, and as long as he could reach that place, his chances of survival would greatly increase. But at this moment, Gu Fei seemed to see a head poking out from that turn in the street, and then quickly shrinking back. Could it be an ambush? Gu Fei's heart tightened, and he did not dare to get too close to that side. After a few sprints from the middle of the street, he finally reached that turn. Gu Fei turned his head to look, wanting to see what the ambush was before deciding what it was. As a result, when he glanced over, he saw a group of extremely wretched fellows crouching at the foot of the wall, each of them looking like a thief. The moment Gu Fei rushed past, he saw all of their heads turning in his direction with a swoosh, and then their faces were filled with surprise. "Brother Zue, come here quickly," one of them shouted. Gu Fei had long since relaxed, and he recognized these fellows as the eternal life among flowers. He quickly rushed into the street, and Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was already waving his hand. "Brothers, it's our turn to fight." Then he saw the fellows under the wall lazily stand up, and while laughing, they pulled their bows and jumped out of the street together. "Shoot!" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka shouted. "Shoot!" Everyone shouted after him, and some of them even whistled in a perverted manner. Gu Fei felt a little embarrassed to be among them, and then he looked at the vast expanse of grass next to him, and saw that the girl was calm and at ease. Habit becomes second nature. This saying was true. Gu Fei thought. The archers of the robbers charged fiercely at the front, and their bows were raised to shoulder level. From the looks of it, they had thought of themselves as a special police force that was going to capture a fugitive. Unexpectedly, at the corner of the street, Gu Fei jumped in alone, and then dozens of people jumped out. "Ambush!" The archers shouted, and the enemy was already raining arrows. Eternal life in the flowery thicket was made up of archers. Fireball squeezed into the middle and wanted to throw a spell, but this group of unorganized and undisciplined guys bumped into him, and he couldn't even complete a successful cast. Although it was chaotic, in this kind of street battle, the simultaneous shooting of nearly 40 archers was too powerful. The archers at the front of the enemy were instantly wiped out. Not a single one was spared. Right behind the archers were the bandits. There was nowhere to hide in the street, and a volley of arrows led to the same result. The third group were the mages who had previously thrown spells at Gu Fei. They had low health and weak defense, and were wiped out after a volley of arrows. After 3 waves of attacks, the 3 main classes of the robbers were clearly eliminated, and the next to be challenged were the warriors. Tank, tank. The boss only reacted after 3 waves of his men were wiped out. The tank warriors rushed out with shields and blocked the archers' attacks. Retreat, retreat. It would be stupid to charge forward at this time. Forward, forward. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka commanded everyone to move forward. It was now the archers' turn to show off their strength. They all pretended to be cool and raised their bows as if they were Agent 007. "It's my turn now." Fireball stomped his feet in the crowd. The opponents were all warriors with high defense, so it was time for him to show off as a mage. Go away. Fireball was pushed out of the crowd by the archers. Fireball was furious. He turned his head and saw Gu Fei standing beside him. He held an apple in his left hand and took out a mage robe from his pocket with his right hand. He handed it to Fireball along with the Nightstream sword. Here, I'll let you show off. Fireball accepted it blankly. After seeing the attributes of the two items, his breathing quickened. He quickly took off his robe and put on the Night Spirit robe. He threw his staff to the side and pointed the Nightstream sword at the enemy formation. Fire wheel from the heavens descend. Fireball chanted loudly. Flames flashed in the sky, and he pounced on the ground. The street instantly became quiet, and a large blank space was dug out from the enemy's formation. As a normal mage, Fireball mainly added points to intelligence. He usually used AoE spells when leveling up, so his proficiency level was higher than Gu Fei's. At this moment he was wearing the Night Spirit robe and wielding the Night Streamer sword. The spells he chanted were much stronger than Gu Fei's. Gu Fei's AoE spells could only insta-kill professions with low HP, but with Fireball's two pieces of equipment, even warriors would be turned into ashes under his hands. Of course, it wasn't absolute. There were still a small number of them standing. But the key was that Fireball quickly added 1,000 layers flames, so the world became so quiet. Sure enough, he killed a mage in seconds. The survivors among the robbers stuttered. Their boss had also been killed by those two spells. The archers of eternal life in the flower bush were also shocked by the fierce clearing. The toughest warrior was actually so weak? Everyone subconsciously thought about what would happen if such a spell was thrown on their head, and suddenly felt their hearts beat faster. Everyone forgot to continue shooting arrows and slowly turned their heads back. Behind them, the mage in black lowered his head and held a long sword in his hand, making a very reserved pose. After feeling the atmosphere for a moment, the mage slowly raised his head and smiled contemptuously. Not bad. There was a dead silence, but it was quickly interrupted by a crisp crack. Gu Fei bit an apple and said to Fireball, "That's enough. Give me back my equipment." Only then did everyone realize what was going on. They surrounded the Fireball and violently hammered it. Butterfly knot. Don't worry if Fireball won't return the equipment to Gu Fei. Chapter 416. The Dark Knight Flowing Light Sword and the Dark Knight Spiritual Robe were returned to Gu Fei amidst the crowd's scolding. Everyone couldn't bear to see Fireball being so impressive. If he was so cool and all the girls were taken by him, then what were they supposed to do? Although there was no other woman here other than the vast expanse of grass, these wretched guys were born to pick up girls. There were no girls on the street, but there were girls in their hearts. The remaining members of the robbers were ignored at this time. They didn't dare to have any other thoughts, so they quickly turned around and ran for their lives. However, as soon as they got out of the street, they started screaming. Gu Fei and the others looked over and saw people flying from the remnants of the robbers. Not long after, the crowd was torn apart, and a Grandmaster of Combat was waving his fists and legs in the middle. Those guys couldn't care less about unity at this time. They each chose a direction and ran for their lives. 100th Era Jingluan didn't chase after them. He looked over at the street and walked over. We're on the same side. Gu Fei saw that a few people seemed to have the intention to shoot arrows, so he quickly shouted. Everyone put down their bows and looked at 100th Era Jingluan running over. He asked Gu Fei, "Where's Jian Nanyu?" He ran away. Gu Fei was helpless. "Hurry up and chase after him," 100th Era Jingluan said. "I don't know where he went," Gu Fei said as he looked at the immortals in the bushes. He didn't know if they had any information. "I didn't see him." Everyone shook their heads. They also received the final information from their brothers and rushed here. However, they left a bit later than Jian Nanyu and the others, so they didn't bump into them. It wasn't easy to find people in such an unfamiliar place. They were lucky to bump into Jian Nanyu the first time. Now that Jian Nanyu was nowhere to be found, Gu Fei felt helpless. On the other hand, Sakurazuka Tsukuzi and his gang of brothers who usually had the indomitable spirit of pestering girls, did not have any impatience towards this at all. Gu Fei didn't want to trouble them anymore, but they had already waved their arms and said, "Brothers, let's go. We're going to find them." "How are you?" Gu Fei asked the Encyclopedia of Wisdom. Of course, he was referring to the fact that he had been thrown to another street. "I'm fine," Encyclopedic Classics said. "It's just that the wall over there is a little high." It was a little embarrassing. Centurion was thrown to the next street by the whirlwind slash, but he was not injured. He wanted to come back and continue the chase, but he did not expect that the buildings on both sides of the street were of different heights. One side was a bungalow, while the other side was a small loft. No matter how skilled the 100 Lives strategist was, he could not run to such a height. Helpless, he could only take a detour like a commoner. Jian Nanyu was let go, but he managed to stop the remaining members of the robbers. It could be considered as him venting his anger a little. While the two were talking, the people from the Immortal Society had already left to look for Fireball. Only Fireball was still rubbing against Gu Fei. "Brother Zue, where did you get those 2 items?" Of course, Gu Fei would not hide anything. In fact, they were just strolling around. It was very easy. As the 3 of them strolled around, Gu Fei told Fireball the details of the quest chain from beginning to end. Quest chain. Fireball was a little frustrated. It was officially announced that the quest chain was made up of several random quests, and the probability of 2 identical quest chains happening was extremely low. Obviously, Fireball could not do anything about it. So Gu Fei turned around and asked Fireball, "How many PK points do you have?" Fireball glanced at it, and was shocked by himself. 18. How could he, Fireball, be able to do that? He never dreamed that he would have such close contact with PK points. Gu Fei patted him on the shoulder. "Take care. Brother Zue, you're messing with me again." Fireball wanted to cry but had no tears. At this moment, he was very regretful that he had played that cool back then. With 18 PK points, it would naturally take 36 hours to clear it. PK quest. Fireball was not a top player, so he did not have the guts to do that. Ask for help from his guild brothers? Those perverted men were hitting him when he was down. He should have asked them for help. After some deliberation, Fireball could only look at Gu Fei pitifully. Of course, Gu Fei was not that disloyal. He patted the terrified Fireball and said, "When this is over, I'll clear it for you." Fireball was naturally very touched. He could not help but move closer to Gu Fei. "Then I'll follow you for now?" With Fireball's low movement speed, following Gu Fei was really a burden. However, Gu Fei also knew that it was very dangerous to have 18 PK points. Letting Fireball follow him could also protect him. Moreover, there was still no news from Jian Nanyu. It was better to wait for news before hurrying on. Just as he was thinking about the news, Han Family Young Master sent a message in the mercenary channel. "Assassin, how's it going?" He got away. Gu Fei was regretful. It had been some time since Gu Fei said he found Jian Nanyu. Jian Nanyu had not revived in the warrior camp. Han Family Young Master guessed that Gu Fei did not succeed. However, Gu Fei's failure was obviously more surprising than his success. Han Family Young Master hurriedly asked, "What happened?" "Another group of robbers. I don't know if they are Jian Nanyu's accomplices, but they suddenly interfered." Gu Fei was very regretful. "Oh, then what about now? Continue looking." Gu Fei replied. "Go do what you need to do." Han Family Young Master ended the call. The other members of Child Elite Group could naturally see the conversation in the channel. Gu Fei actually failed to take down Jian Nanyu. Everyone was amazed. Yutian Shenming ran back from his sniping spot and looked at Han Family Young Master. "How long are we going to waste?" Han Family Young Master ignored him. He looked at the time and muttered, "Brother Yu." Just as he said these 2 words, a familiar figure walked out from a cluster of white light in the warrior camp. "Brother Yu, you're finally back." Han Family Young Master finished his sentence. However, Brother Yu did not answer. He quickly took out his little notebook from his pocket and stood on the spot, quickly writing something. The 4 of them seemed to know what he was doing. No one went forward to disturb him. Brother Yu wrote for a while, then let out a long sigh. He put away his pen and stared at the notebook. He smiled at the four of them. I shouldn't have remembered wrongly. Brother Yu had suddenly gone offline to gather information. But of course, he could not bring the information he had gathered in real life into the game. Brother Yu could only forcefully memorize it. Once he entered the game, he quickly wrote it down in his notebook while his memory was still fresh. Did you find out everything? Han Family Young Master asked. Yes. Brother Yu nodded his head in enjoyment. This was his exclusive Brother Yu moment. He waved the notebook in front of everyone and said, Simple information on the top 20 guilds in Linshui City is here. Wow, you can remember the information on the top 20 guilds? Brother Yu, you're a genius. Yu Tianxunming affirmed Brother Yu's achievements. You're flattering me. Brother Yu immediately said modestly. Tell me the names of the guild leaders. Han Family Young Master said. Brother Yu read them out one by one. Han Family Young Master quickly tested them one by one. When he finished, he angrily scolded. None of them turned on the friend switch. Everyone shrugged their shoulders. Those who could establish guilds were all experts in the main city. Naturally, the friend switch couldn't be turned on casually. Otherwise, countless noobs would add you as a friend and crazily shout, Brother, take me. Brother, give me some money. Go to the mailbox. Han Family Young Master waved his hand. You're preparing. When Han Family Young Master said that he needed these things, everyone did not know his intentions. This kind of information could be casually asked on the road, but the amount of information that Han Family Young Master needed was too large. Ordinary players could basically say the simple information on 2 or 3 of the biggest guilds. Who would remember 20 guilds? Sword Demon suggested going to the guild building to make a simple copy. This method was definitely accurate, but it would take time to get to the guild building. Brother Yu simply went offline and went to the forums to gather information. After all, this warrior camp was a safe offline area, so it was very convenient to come and go. In such a short time, Brother Yu had already gathered information on 20 guilds. His efficiency could not be said to be low. At this moment, Han Family Young Master couldn't add these guild leaders as a friend and said that he wanted to go to the mailbox. Everyone guessed that he had something to discuss with these 20 people. Arriving at the mailbox, Han Family Young Master waved his pen and quickly completed a letter. He casually handed it to the person beside him and said, Copy it. The 4 people's heads moved closer to take a look. After reading, they couldn't help but exclaim, Wow, too vicious. Do you want us to live? The content of the letter was to inform these 20 guilds that the cleric of Linshui City's Jian, Nanyu possessed a resurrection type skill. More importantly, Han Family Young Master also told them that Green Narrow Guild had already started to fight for this equipment. If the first piece of information wasn't bewitching enough, then the second piece of information cut into the guild's weak spot. This kind of exquisite item would benefit any guild's strength. At this moment, even if some guilds did not have the despicable intention of snatching other people's equipment, they would definitely come out to obstruct their competitors when they knew that there was a competitor making a move. After all this, the main focus was naturally on the fight for the staff. You want all the guilds in Linshui City to be annihilated. Everyone exclaimed in admiration at Han Family Young Master's generosity. I don't know what will happen to the guilds, but if Jian Nanyu and his gang don't die, then it's too unreasonable. Han Family Young Master replied calmly. After that, he urged everyone make more copies. I want to send this news to all the core members of each guild other than the guild leader. After all, letters were different from short messages. Very few people would immediately run to the mailbox to read the system's notification. Han Family Young Master had long been prepared for this, so he asked Brother Yu to gather more information about the guilds. Just 2 or 3 guilds might not be able to stir up any trouble. Right now, there were a total of 20 guilds with dozens of guild core members receiving the same letter. Han Family Young Master did not believe that there wasn't a single person who happened to be near the mailbox, so he came to take a look. Furthermore, he had included a gold coin in every letter. This item was attached to the mail, so the system would also give a notification. What was even more amazing was that it would only say that there was a gold coin in the letter, but not the exact amount. Han family young master believed that this gold coin letter would be able to arouse the curiosity of many people. Butterfly knot. Student Jian Nanyu. I want to pray for you. Chapter 417. What are we going to do now? Yutian Shenming asked after seeing that the Han family young master had finished sending the letter. Watch the show. Han family young master said. As soon as he finished speaking, a player hurriedly walked out of a system shop and arrived next to the mailbox. After the six gave way to him, he opened the mailbox and took out a letter. He fumbled around inside the mailbox, but didn't find anything. He then tore open the letter, and a gold coin immediately rolled out. The player was stunned for a moment before cursing, "Fuck." He picked up the gold coin from the ground and took out the letter. The five of them looked at each other and thought, what a coincidence. I got to see a live broadcast of someone receiving this letter. The player opened the letter and glanced at it. His expression immediately changed and he hurriedly ran back to the shop he just came out from. Not long after, he walked out with the other two. The letter was currently in the hands of the other two. The two of them stared at it intently with just a few sentences. Who sent it? The two of them asked the person who had received the letter. I don't know. It was sent anonymously. Letters could be sent anonymously in the game. However, this also meant that they wouldn't be able to receive a reply from the other party. The reply would definitely need to be filled in with the player's ID before it would be delivered. Let's notify the guild leader. Okay. The recipient stood still and sent the message. Not long after, he said in surprise. The guild leader said that he also received a letter with a gold coin. Could it be the same as mine? Who could it be? I don't know. Let's first find some people to pay attention to Green Narrow Guild's movements. The three of them said as they left. How many people are in the city? The last thing the five of them heard was this sentence. Han family young master was startled after hearing this sentence. He then said, I forgot something. What is it? Everyone looked at him. Linshui City is a godforsaken place. It's not easy to gather people. Those who go out to train can only come back when there's a ship. Even if we spread the news to the other guilds, they won't be able to gather many people in a short period of time. Han family young master said. At least a little. Yutian Shenming said. A lot less, said Brother Yu. A player's main lifestyle was to grind for levels and loot. The leveling areas were the main areas of activity. There weren't many players in the city. That brat Jian Nanyu, he didn't choose such a main city on purpose, did he? Han family young master said. No, he was born here, said Brother Yu. He and Jian Nanyu were old acquaintances, and had added each other as friends long ago. Oh, then he's lucky. Han family young master said. What about us now? Yutian Shenming asked the same question he had asked before. I'm just taking a stroll around the city. I'm here to check up on the guild's operations in Waterside City. Han family young master said. Jian Nanyu and the others split up and went back and forth in the city. Their style of doing things was very similar. After changing into a new set of equipment, they would walk on the street with their heads down, not coming into contact with anyone. Splitting up was indeed an effective plan. Finding a person in such a large main city was easier said than done. Thinking back to the time when Upstream and Uncheng Mutsu were struggling to find Gu Fei, one could imagine how difficult this task was. The reason they had been discovered so quickly was because the seven of them were too big of a target. Yu Jiannan regretted not splitting up immediately. Fortunately, they did not suffer too great of a loss. In the end, only Horini was sacrificed. However, he didn't know how the video mage was doing. Jian Nanyu was still worried for Gu Fei. In that situation, a normal player would have thought that Gu Fei wouldn't have been able to escape. Jian Nanyu was quite regretful that he didn't get to eat this fat sheep, but fell into someone else's pocket. I hope he doesn't drop anything when he dies. Jian Nanyu prayed for Gu Fei like this. He didn't know how Gu Fei would feel if he found out. Jian Nanyu had a safe journey and arrived at the east gate of Waterside City. This wasn't the closest gate to their rendezvous point, but he didn't have the time to care about the distance. Naturally, he would take the safest route. Soon he was close to the gate. Jiannenyu was cautious and didn't move forward rashly. He glanced at the gate and couldn't help but complain in his heart. There were already people from Green Narrow Guild guarding the gate. They were carefully observing the players entering and exiting the city. If he wanted to sneak out, Jiannenyu didn't know if they recognized him. It would be fine if they didn't, but if they recognized him, they definitely wouldn't let him pass so easily. Jiannenyu, who was considered a resourceful person, couldn't think of a way. He contacted his other guild members and found out that they were all at the gate. However, apart from Blackwater, they were all stuck here. Blackwater was the only one who swaggered out of the city after entering stealth. "Which gate are you guys at?" Jiannenyu asked everyone. "I'm at the south gate." "I'm at the north gate." "I'm at the west gate." "I'm at the west gate too." "Ah, you're at the west gate too? Where are you? Why don't I see you?" "I don't see you either." From this, it could be seen that their disguise was very successful. They couldn't even find their own people, let alone other strangers. "Let's find a gate to meet up with," Jiannenyu said helplessly. "It's too risky to go out like this." "Which gate?" "Let's go to Dao Xiangmu's place." Dao Xiangmu was at the west gate. Thus, the few of them began to carefully move in that direction. From time to time, the people from Green Narrow Guild would run past them in groups of 2s and 3s. Every time they ran past them, they would break out in a cold sweat. However, they didn't expose themselves. Jiannenyu and the others were still rejoicing in their hearts. However, they didn't know that their actions had given the Han family young master time to execute his gold letter plan. Out of the 20 guilds in Waterside City, a total of 17 responded immediately after receiving the gold letter. The ones who received the letter were either the guild leader or the core members of the guild. In short, the message had already been delivered. Out of the 17 guilds, 6 of them were relatively casual guilds. They weren't greedy and didn't take the news seriously. The remaining 11 guilds began to pay close attention to the matter. Just like what Han family young master and the others had seen at the mailbox, they immediately gathered people to investigate the situation. Green Narrow Guild had hundreds of people. Some were running around the city, some were guarding the city gates, and some were guarding the various safe zones. The Priest Academy, in particular, was heavily guarded. It was easy for people to notice them. As such, they concluded that the news was not fake. Although they were still suspicious of the source, they immediately issued a summon to the players on the leveling island. It took time to return by boat. Jiannenyu's group of 7 wandered around the city, giving them some time. As the enemy's people hurried back, they began to collect information on Jiannenyu's group. The more people there were, the more power they could muster. Green Narrow Guild might not be able to recognize all 7 of them, but now that they had spread the net so far, they only knew a little bit about the situation. Although they didn't exchange information with each other, the 7 of them were basically transparent. Each guild displayed their strengths. Those who recognized Flaming Cloak led their teams to search for this face, while those who recognized Dao Xiangmu searched for this face. Everyone split up, and the number of search parties in the city increased. The 7 of them vaguely sensed this situation. Jiannenyu immediately reminded everyone. The news might have already spread. Everyone be extra careful. Fuck, how did it happen so quickly? I don't know. Jiannenyu couldn't figure it out. As a professional robber, Green Narrow Guild definitely wouldn't leak this kind of information. However, the players in the beach tavern shouldn't have let the news spread so quickly. Of course, Jiannenyu didn't expect Child Elite Group to give such information after the fact. Since the 7 of them sensed it, Green Narrow Shadow, the guild leader of Green Narrow Shadow, naturally sensed it too. How did the news spread so quickly? That was the first thought that flashed through his mind. From beginning to end, Painting Narrow Shadow saw the search teams from the 3 guilds, and he also saw the tacit expressions on the leaders' faces when they looked at him. He was certain that the other party's goal was the same as his. Hello, how are things on your side? Narrow Shadow called the members of the Priest Academy. This was the main battlefield that he had predicted. A lot of people suddenly came. There are people from all the big guilds. The players from the Priest Academy replied while wiping their sweat. In reality, the situation was getting tense. There were more and more guilds gathered here, and there wasn't enough space to stand. On the surface, no one said anything, but the obvious hostility between them scared the players who had just come online. They didn't know what to do and hurriedly went offline. Fuck, these guys are really cunning. Of course, Narrow Shadow knew that it wasn't easy to gather people in Waterside City. These guilds were probably short on manpower at this time, so they all gathered at the Priest Academy. They were determined to take advantage of the situation there. What do we do? The people from the Priest Academy were helpless. Wait, I'll be right there. Narrow Shadow sighed. Now that so many guilds had their eyes on this thing, it wasn't a good idea for everyone to just rush up and snatch it. It seemed like they needed to meet up and discuss this. Meanwhile, on Gu Fei's side, the people from Eternal Life and Flowers and Wandering Swords group of 7 didn't recognize each other at all. Now that they had split up, they didn't know each other even if they stood in front of them. Naturally, they wouldn't be able to find anything. On the other hand, the movements in Waterside City had already fallen into their eyes. Gu Fei, 100 Era's strategist, and a few other people from Eternal Life and Flowers just happened to meet up near the Priest Academy. When he saw the scene in the Priest Academy, Gu Fei's blood started to boil. Aya, it looks like they're going to kill someone, right? Even clerics can attract so much hate. 100 Era's strategist was astonished. It was indeed difficult for clerics to cause trouble. Hee, of course they will. Gu Fei smiled thoughtfully. Hey, what are you laughing at? Boundless Mang was extremely dissatisfied. I didn't mean to hint at you. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. It turned out that the cleric who could cause such a scene was standing next to him. However, the cleric that Gu Fei arrived at was indeed not Boundless Mang. These people don't seem to be from the same guild. With so many guilds guarding here, it's like they're waiting for a boss. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Butterfly Knot. Will there be a battle royale in the next chapter? Won't there be? Won't there? Won't there? Chapter 418. I think they're really waiting to kill a boss. Boundless Mang suddenly said. Everyone looked at her. It's obvious that the news of someone reviving in the beach tavern has already spread. These people are obviously here to ask for advice. Boundless Mang said. Oh, Boundless Mang said tactfully, but everyone quickly understood what she meant. Gu Fei gave her a thumbs up, as expected of someone with experience. Not to mention Gu Fei and 100 Realms strategist, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and Fireball were also experienced players, so they didn't react as quickly as Boundless Mang. What do you mean? Boundless Mang stared at Gu Fei. Nothing, I'm just respecting the truth, Gu Fei said. Boundless Mang was speechless because this was indeed the truth. Back in Moonlit Night City, if she found a priest with a revival skill like this, she would definitely lead everyone to ask for advice. However, when she was at her peak, Dust Guild was the only guild that had a monopoly and no one dared to compete with them. It was definitely not like Waterside City, where the guilds gathered outside the Priest Academy. Boundless Mang counted, but she couldn't count them all. In any case, there were already 6 or 7 guilds. This scene seemed a bit familiar. Boundless Mang was slightly startled and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Back then, when she ambushed people to drop their equipment, it wasn't like this. But when she fell from grace and was hunted down, she was trapped in the Priest Academy. Many guilds raised their flags and squatted outside the academy, swearing to kill everyone. At that time, she didn't feel wronged at all. But now that she knew of Silvermoon's shameless actions, she couldn't help but feel a bit sour when she thought about it. So many people are here, where's the priest? Gu Fei muttered. Boundless Mang came back to her senses and said, They haven't found it yet. They're probably searching the entire city. As soon as they find it, they'll immediately send it over. Gu Fei thought for a moment and said, Their intentions are very clear. There's no way Jian Nanyu and the others don't know about it. Would they still bring the staff with them? There are people in the warehouse too. Mang replied. She noticed all of this because she had directed these processes before and was very familiar with them. Warehouse. Oh, I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is, right now, everyone is crouching in the Priest Academy waiting. What if he gives this equipment to someone else? Gu Fei said. Give it to someone else? Everyone was stunned. Clearly, the veterans of the game didn't approve of this plan. The trust between players in the game was often weak. Handing over such a valuable piece of equipment to someone else for safekeeping might very well become a ritual of severing ties. What's wrong? What's wrong with that? Obviously, Gu Fei didn't have a trust crisis like normal players did when he lent 2 pieces of super equipment to Fireball just to show off. Brother Zui. Fireball's face was full of a pitiful expression. Not everyone is as virtuous as I am, who would return your exquisite equipment without hesitation. If it were anyone else, like Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, they would definitely take the equipment and run. Fuck, how could that be? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was filled with righteous indignation. It's not like it's a lurker's equipment, he said. Everyone looked at him with disdain. I think it's possible that they would do that. Gu Fei concluded in a serious tone. The experience of fighting with Jian Nanyo's group of 7 made him feel that their actions might be shameful, but their friendship was not fake. Moreover, they were a group of robbers, so they could be considered a business group. The resurrection staff was probably a collective property. It was just that a priest could use it, so it was normal for it to be transferred. After listening to Gu Fei's analysis, everyone felt that it made sense. Mang Mang added, there are even more people looking for them now, but there's no sign of them. I think they must have split up. Then who would the equipment be on? Fireball asked. A thief, I guess? Gu Fei guessed. Everyone nodded their heads. A thief had the stealth skill, so it was undoubtedly the easiest for them to avoid being hunted down. It was the safest to place a precious item on him. A thief in stealth, that's even harder to find. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka revealed a troubled expression. They wouldn't be able to recognize him even if he wasn't in stealth, let alone now that he was invisible. We don't have to find him, if we can predict their next move. Gu Fei said. Mang Mang glanced at the chaotic crowd outside the Priest Academy. With the current situation, it's impossible for them to stay in Waterside City. They must think of a way to leave. But Waterside City isn't a place where they can leave as they please. They must take a boat. However, it's impossible for them to take a boat at the docks because that's the territory of the big guilds. They can only use their own boat. Gu Fei said as he looked at Mang Mang Mang. They had taken this boat together before. It's like this. Mang 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 said to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Tell our brothers to leave the city and walk along the shore. If they find any straw huts, haystacks, don't overlook any places that can be covered. It's very likely that a boat is hidden underneath. Once you find a boat, send the coordinates over. Okay. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka repeatedly nodded his head. Tell everyone to be careful. Be on your guard against a thief in stealth, Gu Fei said. Understood. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had been listening from the side. He had long since understood the meaning behind Nye Yan's words. He immediately sent a message to his brothers, telling them to go to the shore to find a boat. A place where things can be covered. The brothers of eternal life among the flowers began to display their wretched imaginations. Won't a pair of wild mandarin ducks be revealed after we open it like this? Wow, that's a possibility. Exciting. This is too exciting. Let's go. Their morale was immediately boosted. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka happily nodded his head and said, Our brothers have already gone. At this time, Baisher Jingluan, who had been silent all this time, nudged Gu Fei and said, Hey, our target seems to be Jian Nanyu. It's not this resurrection skill equipment, right? Immediately, the other three's gazes focused on Gu Fei. They thought to themselves, So you're also greedy at the sight of wealth. However, Gu Fei's expression was calm. Who said that my target is a skill equipment? This escape route was something that Jian Nanyu had to take. Finding the boat is equivalent to finding Jian Nanyu. I see. Baisher Jingluan nodded. But that skill equipment sounds very valuable. If it's convenient, let's drop it. Robbery? That's not a good idea. Gu Fei wiped the sweat off his forehead. Robbery. This seems to be the idea that you gave me at the beginning, right? Baisher Jingluan said. Really? Gu Fei thought about it, and it seemed to be the case. In the beginning, he did suggest that Bai Shijingluan rob the robbery party. Later on, it was Brother Yu and the others who analyzed that there wasn't much profit to be made from robbing the party, so this proposal was abandoned. Looking at it now, Jian Nanyu's group still had some profit to be made. If that's the case, let's rob it if it's convenient, Gu Fei decided. If that's the case, we need to leave someone at the Thieves' Guild, Boundless Mang said. Why don't you go there? Gu Fei said to Bai Shijingluan. Only one of them could stay at the Thieves' Guild. This was because thieves knew how to go stealthily. Only the two of them could sense their auras. All right. Bai Shijingluan nodded his head cheerfully. Then let's also go outside the city to find a boat, Gu Fei said to the other three. Everyone nodded their heads. Afterwards, Bai Shijingluan went to the Thieves' Guild alone to set up an ambush, while Gu Fei, Fireball, and the other two headed out of Linshui City. On the way, Gu Fei sent a message to his brothers in the mercenary group. What are you guys busy with? Inspecting work, Han family young master replied. The five of them walked around the city and occasionally saw small teams searching everywhere. They felt that their hard work wasn't in vain, and were very gratified. Their group movement attracted many suspicious gazes. However, no one rashly attacked them because everyone was sure that it wasn't these 5 people. Look, there are 5 people with the right profession. Is it them? The first person to discover them would always say this. Then, the second person would come to the conclusion after a closer look. No, it should be all men. There shouldn't be any women. Oh. Everyone looked at Han family young master in relief. Of course, this was all in the dark, so the 5 elite team members didn't know about it. After walking for a while, they finally arrived at the Priest Academy. There were even more people than when Gu Fei and the others stayed there. The leader of the Green Narrow Guild, Red-Green Narrow Shadow, was also there. He was nervously discussing with the other guild leaders who had just arrived. In their eyes, Wandering Swords Group was already a plate of fat meat on the dining table. It was inevitable that they would be eaten. The problem was, with so many pairs of chopsticks, who would be able to reach them? It would be a chaotic battle, and whoever picked them up would keep it. This method couldn't be said to be unfair, but the problem was that if they really did it, the people who got close to the priest would be killed before the priest died. This wasn't something that anyone wanted to see. Since the managers were all here, everyone decided to discuss a harmonious and unified method. Seeing this group of people with the mentality that they couldn't wait for everyone else to die, yet they still wanted to sit together and discuss in a pleasant manner, Han family young master sneered. What's wrong? Everyone hurriedly asked. Those who were familiar with Han family young master knew that although this guy was scheming, he wasn't the type to not show his emotions. When he smiled warmly, it meant that you were in trouble. When he smiled coldly, it meant that you made a mistake, and he was laughing at your idiocy. Let's go. Han family young master didn't have any interest in staying at the Priest Academy for another second. He called for them to leave. Where are we going? Everyone asked. We're going to walk around outside the city. Han family young master said. What's there to walk around outside the city? Everyone didn't understand. Linshui City is already in such a mess, how can Wandering Swords Group survive? They're definitely thinking of a way to leave. Han family young master said. But can they still leave? Along the way, they looked at the city gates. As the players who went out to level up returned, the guards at the city gates became more and more full. There's always someone who can leave. Han family young master said. Who? Thieves. Butterfly knot. Who is the target? Who will answer? Chapter 419. Waterfront City West Gate. Finally, Jian Nanyu managed to move to this side without any mishap. Is everyone here? He asked the others in the channel. Yes, the other 5 replied. At this time, Jian Nanyu was still in a small alley. He peeked outside and only found the glue that was pretending to be a stall in the small street market on the street of the city gate. Glue had often set up stalls on the street near the city gate when he was still a beginner. He was able to put on a show and no one suspected anything. As for the other 4, Jiannanyu scanned the area carefully but still couldn't find them. He was satisfied. He couldn't even recognize them, let alone those strangers. Danan, what do we do now? Do we charge out? The one who sent the message was Flaming Cloak. It's a little troublesome. There seems to be a lot more people at the city gate, Dao Xiangmu said. Jiannanyu quickly realized the problem. Compared to when he went to the east gate, everyone had gathered again. With this delay, the number of people at the city gate had increased exponentially. Previously, Jiannanyu was prepared to gather everyone's strength and charge out. As long as they killed all the enemies, they wouldn't know where they went. Jiannanyu was originally confident. But now that the number of enemies had increased, not to mention killing all of them, even killing their way out was a problem. The channel was silent. How about this? Glue said. I'll lure them away and they'll find a chance to charge out. Let me do it. As a cleric, I can attract all their attention, Dao Xiangmu said. Everyone was silent. Dao Xiangmu's words weren't wrong. Glue would definitely not be able to attract all of the enemy's attention. Only a cleric would have a chance. However, the problem was that Glue was an archer and had an advantage in speed. There was a chance for him to escape, but if a cleric was exposed, he would definitely die. Then I'll go. No one spoke. Dao Xiangmu had made up his mind and was about to appear. Jiannanyu suddenly sent a message. No one go. Why? Dao Xiangmu was puzzled. Jiannanyu was never an emotional person. It's useless even if you lure them away. If you stand out, you'll be killed. How many steps can you take? Jiannanyu said. Dao Xiangmu thought about it and agreed. How could someone without speed lure the enemies away? He would be killed before he could even take 2 steps. Then what do we do? Someone asked. Listen to me. Jiannanyu already had a plan in mind. Good idea. After Jiannanyu finished speaking, everyone slapped the table and cheered. At this moment, more than 10 guilds of Waterside City had gathered at the Western City Gate. Everyone was a team with perfect class composition, and they all wanted to occupy the best position under the city gate. The atmosphere was very incompatible, and they all looked at each other with fire in their eyes. They were waiting for the results of the negotiations between the presidents of the Priest Academy. If there was any disagreement, this place would immediately turn into a battlefield. At this moment, every team was preparing for battle, calculating what kind of methods they should use once the battle began. But at the same time, they did not forget another important mission. Keep an eye on the players coming and going. The atmosphere was so tense that it was about to freeze. Everyone's palms were sweating as they gripped their weapons. Suddenly, on the street closest to the city gate, a priest rushed out in panic. At this moment, the eyes of the players below the city gates lit up. Is it him? Just as this trace of hesitation flashed in everyone's hearts, they saw an arrow fly out from the alley that the priest ran out from, and hit the priest's shoulder. The players below the city gate were already in an uproar, and they moved closer to the priest without any prior agreement. The priest's footsteps did not stop. He wanted to continue running, but a chain of fireballs chased after his footsteps and hit his back. At the same time, a homing arrow flew over. A white light flashed. But within the circle of light, an object fell down. With a bang, the object fell to the ground. When the white light dissipated, everyone could clearly see that it was a magic staff. Almost at the same time, an archer had already rushed out from the alley. He glanced at the approaching players and hurriedly rushed towards the magic staff on the ground. But immediately after, a warrior valiantly rushed out and used charge to hit the archer's waist. The archer was sent flying with a whoosh. The warrior wanted to pick up the magic staff, but his movement was a bit too slow. The experts below the city gate had already reacted. Roaring angrily, the mage's spells and the archer's arrows flew out at the same time. With the magic staff as the center, the mages set the surroundings ablaze, while the archers fiercely shot at the warrior. How could the warrior take even half a step forward? In a panic, he retreated back into the alley. Quick, the magic staff! A shout came from who knew where. The various guilds' teams fiercely rushed forward. Those with greater speed had already surpassed the crowd, but when they were still a few steps away from the magic staff, Flames immediately fell from the sky, turning them into flying ash. Everyone stopped in their tracks. At this moment, anyone who dared to pick up the magic staff would immediately become the target of everyone. After this pitiful player was sacrificed, everyone thought of this logic. For a moment, everyone looked at each other. The magic staff was just a few steps away from them, but no one dared to go and pick it up. Everyone was quickly discussing in their private chat channels what they should do. Some people had already reported the situation here to the guild leaders. The priest school was already in a mess. The guild leaders were still discussing the current situation, unable to find a suitable solution. Then they saw a priest resurrect in the priest school. Before anyone could see clearly, the priest went offline with the white light of resurrection. While everyone was still in a daze, they received a report from the west gate. A priest has died, and a magic staff has been dropped. When the guild leaders heard this, they immediately led their members and rushed towards the west gate, understanding the situation and the details of the situation along the way. The magic staff is on the ground, no one dares to touch it. This was a good situation, but not a long-term solution. This was because the items on the ground would be refreshed when the time was up. And this time limit was only 5 minutes. From the priest school to the west gate, even the fastest person couldn't reach it in 5 minutes. In other words, before the guild leaders arrived with their people, someone had to pick up the magic staff. Otherwise, everyone would be drawing water with a sieve. At this moment, the guild leaders were considering the fastest possible situation. They all reminded their subordinates, look for opportunities to snatch the magic staff. Even if you can't get it, you must see who picked it up in that person's class. At the same time, the guards at each resurrection point were warned to be 120% vigilant. Westgate. The atmosphere was extremely tense. At this time, it had been half a minute since the magic staff had fallen to the ground. It seemed like no one was moving, but in reality, the people in the front row were moving forward in an extremely imperceptible way. Everyone wanted to enter a certain range, a distance where they could reach out and pick up the magic staff. That way, even if they died immediately, it would be worth it. Unless his luck was extremely bad, and his death just happened to drop the staff he had picked up. After a minute, everyone's intentions were exposed. At this time, they had actually shortened the distance by 1 step. This was a change that could be seen with the naked eye. The players in the back row were a little surprised. In their eyes, unknowingly, the players in the front row had actually opened up a distance between them by 1 step. Only now did they realize that the effect of many a little makes a mickle was truly terrifying. Someone suddenly rushed out from the front row. In reality, when everyone stood in a row, it was impossible to be at the same distance from the magic staff. Some people were slightly further away, while others were slightly closer. The person who attacked was the closest to the magic staff. He was only 2 steps away, a distance that could be reached with 1 step and a bend. He finally couldn't hold back and made the first move. He was fast, but others were faster than him. He was the closest to the magic staff, but someone was closer to him than he was to the magic staff. The 2 players beside him immediately attacked when they saw this guy move. The 2 of them worked together and killed him on the spot. And among the 2, one of them was more cunning. He used this opportunity to cleverly advance his position, and after his successful attack, he wanted to grab the magic staff. As a result, there were players who had been watching him closely and attacked him. The situation at this time was already on the verge of breaking out, and now they had already touched it twice. The chain reaction was completed quickly. Everyone fought, rushing forward to grab the magic staff while clearing the dissidents around them. The scene was chaotic, and the players used all kinds of methods. Someone almost picked up the magic staff in the chaos. The people around him saw that it was too late to stop him, and hurriedly kicked the magic staff away. The ground was full of people's feet, and the magic staff couldn't have rolled far. But the first person missed this opportunity and immediately died in the chaos. The second player found an opportunity in the chaos. He had just bent down when his butt was kicked hard, and he lost his balance and fell to the ground. But his arm was still stretched out to grab the magic staff, and he failed. In the end, he was trampled to death by the players. Everyone finally realized that bending down to pick up the magic staff in such a chaotic situation was simply looking for death. So no one made such a rash move. The players who rushed close to the magic staff all desperately stretched out their legs, trying to step on the magic staff. Crowding, fighting spells death. The players who had nothing to do with them looked at the scene in front of them in horror. At this time, Jiannan Yu and a few of his brothers were sneaking out of the alley at the side, and they walked out of the west gate. Nobody noticed them, as everyone's attention was on the magic staff on the ground. However, everything was just a show put up by Jiannan Yu and the others. Even the cleric who died wasn't one of them. He was just an extremely low-level newbie player that they had randomly identified on the street. He convinced the newbie player to sacrifice himself with 50 gold coins and a decent piece of cleric equipment. As for the magic staff on the ground, it was just an ordinary magic staff that the newbie player threw to the ground the moment he died. Anyone could do that. Jiannan Yu predicted that these guys would have preconceived notions when they saw the scene just now, and nobody would think that it was just a show and use appraisal to verify its authenticity. Jiannan Yu was the last to walk out of the west gate. He looked back at the players who were still fighting over the ordinary magic staff on the ground, and left a disdainful smile. Chapter 420. On the shore of Waterside City, the Brothers of Eternal Life were treading on the waves and searching for grass. As a lurker, their movement speed was extremely fast. It was easy for them to find something as big as a boat, so their efficiency was extremely high. The 30 or so players circled around the shore of Waterside City in a clockwise direction. Not long after, they received the first report. Coordinates XXX, a boat found. Just one? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka replied. I searched carefully. Nonsense. How could I not see such a big thing if there were two? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka didn't receive any respect from his subordinates. Stay behind, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Along the way, they specifically asked around about the private boats in Waterside City, and confirmed that most of the boats here were the same. It wasn't that players didn't like to pursue individuality, but that ordinary people didn't know how to make a boat. These boats were all made by a shipping company in the city. This shipping company was actually a mercenary group. It was said that it was formed by a group of players who had knowledge in this field. This group of people seemed to have discovered this business opportunity not long after they were born in Waterside City, and established a shipping company. As the game developed, their lineup also continuously expanded. No one knew the standard of the players in the group. In short, the people in the shipping company were relatively wealthy. After all, Waterside City was a monopoly organization. According to the shipping company, this type of boat that could carry 5 people was the limit of the tools and materials that could be found in the game. Therefore, the private boats owned by players could only be smaller than this. It was impossible for them to be larger. From this, it could be seen that if Jiannan Yu and the others wanted to go on a road trip out of Waterside City, one boat definitely wouldn't be enough. They needed 2, which was why Tsubasa Sakuratsuka confirmed that there was only one boat. Although they knew that Jiannan Yu and the others needed 2 boats to leave together, they didn't dare to confirm that they would park their boats together. Therefore, they could only leave people at the places where the boats were found. In the end, as the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th reports came in, Gu Fei and the others realized that they might not have enough manpower. Currently, every main city in the game had a population of several 100,000. Waterside City was no exception. In Linshui City, having a private boat was a way to display one's status. Some experts, pretentious criminals, or rich people liked to own a private boat to keep up appearances. Legend has it that driving one's own boat and carrying a beauty on the water was the highest goal of picking up girls in Linshui City. This was the same logic as driving a small car to chase after beauties in real life. If the boat was rented or borrowed, or if it was simply a system very similar to a public bus, then the grade of the boat would drop by a lot. Due to all these reasons, the number of players in Linshui City who owned a private boat wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. The 30 or so people under Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's command were quickly annihilated after they were sent out. At this time, each of them had discovered a boat, and were guarding it according to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's instructions. However, there was still a large area along the water that had yet to be explored. How do we do this? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was worried. He looked towards Gu Fei and Boundless Mang, the two people who planned this operation. Gu Fei thought for a moment before saying, "Let's have our brothers take a closer look at the boats we found. Maybe some people will put some sort of mark on their own boat. If they discover that it's clearly not Tsubasa Azuma's, then don't guard it." "What are the names of Tsubasa Azuma's group?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked. This question stumped Gu Fei. He only knew Tsubasa Azuma, so he hurriedly asked Brother Yu. Brother Yu lived up to his reputation as an intelligence-gathering expert. That day, when he suspected that the remaining members of Wandering Sword's group of 7 were the characters that had disappeared from the top 10 in the recent update, he immediately went to investigate the members of the top 10 one by one. Tsubasa Azuma's group of 7, Warrior Tsubasa Azuma, Thief Blackwater, Sorcerer Flaming Jacket, Archer Glue, Priest Inakamu, Paladin Invincible Lucky Star, and the other priest was not a member of the top 10. Gu Fei told the results to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. He was also quite regretful. "There's still one person we don't know. Sai, there's nothing we can do. Let's have our brothers search like this for now." After Tsubasa Sakuratsuka gave the order, the 30 or so people got busy again. After a careful investigation, they discovered that there were players who had carved their names on the boats. Their names were not on the boats of the 6, so no one paid any attention to them. Unfortunately, only half of the players used the simple method of carving their names. The other half also made marks, but they used drawing to express themselves. They looked like scribbles, making it hard for people to identify them. Naturally, they couldn't give up on guarding the boats. However, they could finally split up some people to continue working. The remaining people were also arranged to move around as much as possible. They just needed to keep the boats that they found within the range of their eyes. "Let's hurry up," Boundless Mang said. "The more people we have, the more power we have. Brother Zue, you can't just leave me here," Fireball cried. Along the way, there were actually people who received his quest to arrest him. Fortunately, Gu Fei was there to deal with them. After a few exchanges, the other party felt that they were no match for him and left. If Gu Fei wasn't there, Fireball would have already been trapped in the water dungeon. "Okay, come with me," Gu Fei said. As they spoke, the 4 of them finally arrived at the city gate. There were actually no strong players from many guilds here, which surprised them. "Looks like Azure Blade has already left the city. We need to hurry," Gu Fei said. Fireball saw the situation and knew that if he continued to drag things out and slow down Gu Fei's movements, it would be a bit annoying. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Zue, hurry up and go. I can do it myself." "Okay, you be careful. I think you should go to the beach at the pier and drink some wine. If you're there, the people who received the quest won't dare to touch you." After Gu Fei patted him, he nodded at Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and Boundless Mang and ran out of the city gate as fast as he could. "Brother Zue, you're such a practical person. Why didn't you be polite to me?" Fireball's face was full of tears. He swore to himself that he would never play with high-quality equipment again. "Then Fireball, you go drink. We'll hurry up and go," the other 2 also said to Fireball. At this critical moment, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had the demeanor of a general. He didn't stick to the girl and used his fastest speed to search the other side. He randomly chose a side in the Boundless Mang and slowly walked away. Gu Fei sped along the beach outside the city. He felt that it was a bit strange when he saw that everything was calm. Since Azuma Tsubasa had already left the city, the guild should have guessed his intentions and wanted to set up camp at the beach. Even if they couldn't set up camp in a short time, there should be some scattered people around. For example, the guards at the city gate. How could they disappear so quickly after coming out of the city gate? Gu Fei looked left and right. Other than Sakurazuka Tsukuzi, who had just come out with him, and the vast expanse of grass, there was no one else. Of course, Gu Fei didn't know that the scene at the west gate had already changed the situation. After a few minutes of fierce and chaotic struggle, someone finally took advantage of the opportunity when he fell and ruthlessly snatched the staff from his hands. Although he was quickly slaughtered amidst the crowd's cries of surprise, he was very happy that he managed to get his hands on the magic staff. This person was a warrior. When he resurrected at the warrior camp, he was still holding the magic staff in his hand. After he couldn't wait to admire the magic staff's attributes, his whole body was already numb. At this time, his guildmaster had already received the good news of him snatching the magic staff, and immediately sent a congratulatory message. In the end, he received a bitter reply from the warrior. "Guildmaster, we were tricked." At the same time, he sent the magic staff's attributes to the guildmaster. It was an extremely ordinary magic staff, but it was easy for people to understand that they had been tricked. The guildmaster immediately sent an order to the other guild members. Immediately chase out of the city. Then he was about to tell the other guild masters about this situation, but the moment before he sent the message, he suddenly stopped. Why do I have to tell the others? He suddenly asked himself this question. The others don't know that the magic staff is fake. Seeing our people snatch it, they definitely won't be satisfied. Therefore, they will definitely gather at the warrior camp. Since their attention has been successfully diverted, aren't we the only ones who know the true whereabouts of the magic staff? That was close. I almost did something stupid. The guildmaster quickly deleted the message he had just written and sent it to the warrior who sacrificed himself to pick up the magic staff. You've worked hard. Go offline and rest for a while. Ah. Why? The warrior didn't understand. The guildmaster didn't hide anything and simply explained his thoughts. This warrior really didn't care about personal matters for the sake of the guild. He nodded happily and went offline. Everything was as the guildmaster had predicted. Although the other guilds didn't manage to snatch the magic staff, they clearly saw who had it. At this time, after reporting it, the guilds had already started moving towards the warrior camp, ready to use their actions to shed all pretense of cordiality. In the end, before they could do anything, the comrade who stayed behind at the warrior camp sent a message. That warrior immediately went offline after reviving. Fuck, he moved so fast. The guildmasters were all furious. No matter how good an individual was, no matter how powerful a guild was, they could only scratch the wall in pain when faced with going offline. Fuck, guard the warrior camp 24 hours. Don't let go of anyone who came into contact with that guy. A guildmaster had already gone crazy and issued such an order. As the person in charge of this event, Narrow Shadow was also very angry. He communicated with the guildmasters one by one, venting his displeasure in his heart. It's rare that everyone is free. Come to my tavern on the beach for a drink. It's my treat. Narrow Shadow sent out an invitation. Some guildmasters who liked to vent their anger immediately agreed. Others felt that Narrow Shadow's invitation this time seemed to have a deeper meaning. In the end, no one refused. All right, I'll wait for everyone at the tavern. See you there. After Narrow Shadow sent this message, he started walking towards his tavern on the beach. There was a smile on his face the entire time. He didn't look like he was angry in the message at all. Chapter 421. The sun, the waves, the beach, and a group of people running like dogs. Gu Fei was one of them. Since he already knew that Jiannan's group of 7 was outside the city, finding a boat was no longer important. It was more important to quickly find the people. The area outside of Waterfront City was not as vast as a main city, because there was a body of water not too far away. The terrain here was relatively simple. It was mainly a sandy beach without any ups and downs. Occasionally, there would be flowers, grass, and trees, but they were not very big. A small forest could be counted, but it was definitely not a forest. Therefore, the view here was relatively vast. Gu Fei looked around as he ran along the coast. In reality, he was going in circles around Waterfront City. After going in circles, Gu Fei finally saw a group of people. There were far more than 7 people. It was clear that they were not Jiannan's group. However, they were still in a hurry, carrying weapons in their hands and emitting a murderous aura. At the same time that Gu Fei saw them, the other party also noticed Gu Fei. For people suddenly separated from the group and ran towards Gu Fei. What do you do? The four immediately asked when they arrived in front of Gu Fei. Their tone was not very friendly. Nothing, just running. Gu Fei replied without batting an eyelid. Running. The other party was stunned. Life is about movement. Gu Fei ran and jumped a few times in a professional manner. He was a physical education teacher. The other party looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Gu Fei grinned. The four stared at him without blinking, as if they were hesitating about something. What do you guys want? If there's nothing else, I'll continue running. Gu Fei said. The four didn't reply. It seemed that they were still hesitating. Gu Fei smiled again and said, goodbye. Then he ran around the four of them. At this moment, the four suddenly made up their minds. After shouting stop, they pounced towards Gu Fei. Their group was still advancing when the leading player suddenly received a message. Fuck, we're dead. What? The leader didn't understand. That bastard killed us. The man repeated. The captain was startled and quickly turned his head to the side to look. The mage in black continued to run forward on the beach as if there was no one around. And the four brothers who had just passed by had disappeared. The captain's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. Because he was in a hurry, when he saw this suspicious character, he randomly sent 4 players to question him. In the end, the other party's answer was strange. Just in case, he gave the order to kill him. The 4 players were all good players, so he didn't think it would be a problem to deal with a mage, so he didn't even look back and continued to lead the team forward. In the end, less than 5 seconds after he gave the order, the news came that the 4 of them were dead. This was simply inconceivable. Even if this mage was an expert, there should have been a process of entanglement when fighting with the 4 of them, right? How could he defeat all 4 of them in 5 seconds? The captain's face was solemn as he asked the dead, "How did you die?" He killed him instantly. Instant death? You were killed instantly by a mage? The captain was shocked. He was talking to a warrior. The term instant death was usually not associated with warriors, unless they encountered a boss that was many levels higher than them. Yes, the other party replied with absolute certainty. The captain looked towards the beach again in shock. Damn, this mage runs so fast. He exclaimed again. In the time it took to send a few messages, the mage had already surpassed their team and left them in the dust. Previously, he had only noticed that there was a stranger on the beach where there shouldn't be anyone, so he didn't pay much attention to the details. Now that he was paying attention, he found that this mage was full of strangeness. This person's background was unknown, and he didn't know if he had anything to do with what they wanted to do. Should he continue to entangle with him? The captain couldn't make up his mind. If this person was just an ordinary character, he would have killed him just now. Why would he have so much trouble? But he was also an expert, which made him feel very troublesome. After Gu Fei killed those 4 guys, he had been waiting for the team's next move. In the end, there was no reaction for a long time, so he didn't take it seriously and quickened his pace, leaving them behind. At this time, Fireball, who had gone to the tavern on the beach, sent a message to Gu Fei. This kid went to the artificial safe zone to find a sense of security, but he inadvertently listened in on the gathering of the guild bosses in Waterside City. Fireball, who was listening attentively, more or less heard the whole story and learned about the incident where the staff had been dropped at the West City Gate. At this time, the staff had already been obtained by a guild called the Munitions Factory. The person who had picked up the staff had immediately gone offline, and the guild leaders were currently sulking over this matter. The item has already been dropped? Gu Fei was startled when he heard this news. He couldn't help but look back at the team that had already fallen behind him. Gu Fei could only think that such an existence had something to do with Jian Nan's group. But the problem was that other than himself, the others were obviously here for the resurrection skill equipment. Now that the staff had been dropped, why were these people still searching for something outside the city gate? Ask around and see what the guild emblem of the munitions factory looks like, Gu Fei replied to Fireball. After sending the message, he turned around and sprinted towards the team of players. The captain saw that Gu Fei was getting further and further away from them, but he couldn't come up with any ideas. He thought that he might as well leave it at that, but he didn't expect that guy to suddenly turn around and run towards his team. "Archers!" the captain hurriedly called out. Immediately, an archer came out and shot arrows at Gu Fei. Gu Fei stopped in his tracks and swung his sword to knock down the arrows. The archer was shocked and speechless. Gu Fei took the opportunity to shout at them. "Don't attack, I just want to ask something." "Who are you?" the captain shouted. "It's not convenient to talk at this distance. Can you come closer?" Gu Fei actually wanted to look for the guild emblem on the archer. He didn't think about it when he killed the 4 people in a second. The captain wanted to say no, but there were dozens of people on his side. It was not right for him to be afraid of a single person, so he nodded and said, "Come here." To show that he didn't have any ill intentions, Gu Fei put his sword back into his pocket. The captain heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Gu Fei's actions. However, if he knew that the speed at which Gu Fei drew his sword from his pocket was not much different from when he held it in his hand, he would definitely not be so relieved. In the blink of an eye, Gu Fei was in front of them and hurriedly scanned the row of people. Fuck. Not a single person was wearing a guild emblem. Gu Fei cursed under his breath. At this time, the news that Fireball had inquired about arrived. "I heard that the guild emblem of the munitions factory is a small tank. It's very easy to recognize." There was also another piece of news that he had just overheard. These guild leaders were planning to work together to destroy the munitions factory guild, and they were going to do it immediately. Gu Fei was still calm. His eyes quickly searched the group of people, but he still didn't see a single person wearing a guild emblem. For them to be so harmonious, they must have specially discussed this. Gu Fei. The other party saw that Gu Fei was in front of him, but he didn't say anything. His eyes swept across the group of people sneakily. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "Who are you? What do you want?" Nothing. Everyone continue with your work." Gu Fei suddenly turned around and ran away. Fuck. Everyone was dumbfounded and looked at each other. "Captain, should we get rid of him?" Someone came up and asked. "Forget it." The captain looked at the back of Gu Fei running away. "The less trouble, the better. We still have business to attend to. Hurry up and move forward." The group continued to move forward. Gu Fei was in front of them, gradually running further and further away. He suddenly realized that no matter what this group of people wanted to do, he finally knew where they were heading. The terrain outside of Waterside City was simple. It was just a circle, and he was also heading in this direction. Whatever they wanted to do, he might be able to easily encounter them. This was Gu Fei's plan. Therefore, he didn't use words to probe the other party's background. Instead, he turned around and ran. At this moment in the city, the various large guilds that had just encircled Jian Nanyo's group of 7 were once again busy. This time, their target was one of the large guilds in Waterside City, the munitions factory. After the period of territorial wars at the pier and beach, it had been a long time since a large-scale guild war had broken out in Waterside City. The various guilds' hierarchy had already been set, and everyone was carefully managing and maintaining the current balance. However, the appearance of this exquisite equipment had finally broken this balance. The munitions factory, which was suspected to have obtained this equipment, was hated by all the other guilds. At this moment, the various guild leaders were gathered at a table. Taking advantage of the alcohol, they all issued a declaration of war against the munitions factory in their own guilds. This was the largest alliance of guilds in Waterside City's history. There were as many as 11 guilds that jointly issued a challenge to the munitions factory. The munitions factory did not have the strength to go against the 11 guilds. At this moment, the guild leader was feeling extremely proud of his petty cleverness. Suddenly, he was met with a calamity. He was leading a group of people on the streets, intending to quickly leave the city to search for Jian Nanyo's group. Suddenly, several groups of people appeared from various streets. This was the first time he had seen such a grand scene. They didn't even have the time to attack, before they were extinguished by the other party like a torrential storm. At the same time, bad news came from everywhere. All the members of the munitions factory who had a small tank on their chest were surrounded and beaten up. Even those who had not returned to participate in this matter were no exception. In the blink of an eye, The parties that had been encircling the leveling area without interfering with each other had valiantly pounced on them, as if they had encountered a boss. Many members of the munitions factory did not understand what was going on when they arrived at the resurrection point. At this moment, the guild leader of the munitions factory was also crouching at the resurrection point. Outside the resurrection point, a group of hungry wolves was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. What made him want to cry even more was that at this moment, the party that had left the city to search for Jian Nanyo's group of 7 had yet to be killed. At this moment, they were still following his request and reporting the situation to him from time to time. Nothing, still nothing. At this moment, the guild leader of the munitions factory finally understood the principle of an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. This made him feel even more wronged because he was not pregnant at all. He was only pretending to have it for a while. You're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.